When I arrived on scene, there were people sitting on their screened-in patios while we were out there. They watched it all. Everyone in the neighborhood was worried that something bad had happened to Fred.
It was all woods in the back of the mailbox. And I was afraid that whoever did this might still be there.
Everybody was scared. I mean, this actually frightened everybody.
And Fred's wife, Sherry, was screaming and yelling. She was just frantic.
The Bloodhound tracking team members were preparing to begin their search for Fred. And that's when we noticed the door to the mailbox was open. We had found blood and a pair of glasses. Someone had been drugged through this pool of blood. One of the team members saw something that caught his eye in the wood line. And when we illuminated that area with light, it was a dead body. There was a wound on the back of his head that was bleeding, and there was a shoelace that had been tied around his neck. Having no more information than that, there's a lot of question marks. We've gone from a missing person to a homicide.
Fred lived about 30 feet across the courtyard from us. If you knew him, you liked him. You know, simple as that. The thing that I enjoyed most was having a little maker's mark with him in the afternoon.
Fred was the only neighbor, because it was a new subdivision going up. He introduced himself to us, and he said, if we need anything, I'm right next door. If you need me, call me.
He told us about how he was getting married. He was going to be bringing his wife from Kentucky to Myrtle Beach in a couple of months.
He loved her, and Sherry thought the world of Fred.
Fred did very well for himself. I don't think money was an object to him. Fred gave Sherry anything she wanted.
They went to Holland, they went to China, they went to New York. He bought her a sports car with a convertible top, and anything she wanted. You know, everything was just perfect.
They put the shoelace around his neck, cinched it tight, and left him to die there in the woods like an animal. The location of the crime tells me that it was a crime of opportunity. They wanted it done quickly, they wanted it done efficiently, and they wanted it done now.
Fred was probably 240, 230 pounds, so we knew that whoever had done this had to have the strength to drag Fred into the woods approximately 25 feet.
They were about a size 13 work boot, and they had a very long stride. I'm looking for someone, most likely a male, who's very large and very strong. Sherry said she went to bed around 10 o'clock. She woke up around 10 minutes before midnight and noticed that Fred wasn't in the bedroom. She assumed she would just go downstairs and he would still be working, but didn't find him anywhere else in the condo. Noticed that the mailbox key was gone and his cell phone was gone. I took that opportunity to advise her that Fred had been located and he was deceased. She was immediately inconsolable and collapsed on the couch to the point that she actually lost consciousness. I couldn't find a pulse. I'm positioning myself to begin CPR when suddenly she took a deep agonal breath and she came back.
She thought that the driving was weird, driving so slowly, She also said that when the truck entered the parking lot, that the lights were already off.
She told me that she sat there a few minutes and then she says, I grabbed my bag, she says, and I hurried up and locked my door and I went to my townhouse. And she said that truck just stayed there.
She thought that was very abnormal and suspicious behavior for that neighborhood. But we did not have a license tag number. We didn't have a description of a driver. Leads really weren't developing at that point. They had some sort of disagreement about a trash can receptacle. Other people in the neighborhood heard he would do harm to Fred Engel.
People said he is terrorizing the area. Nobody has a problem with Fred except this kid.
Everyone I talked to felt like he could be capable of murdering someone. So that immediately made them suspect number one. We went and recovered video surveillance footage, and it was exactly the way that juvenile claimed it would be. That completely excluded him from the list of suspects. I had really come to a point in the investigation very rapidly where I'd run out of leads and things seemed to be slowing down. The most important piece of forensic information that came from the analysis of Fred's laptop was that he powered the laptop down about 11 o'clock, and Sherry reported that she woke up around 11:50. So that narrowed the time frame down for the murder to a 50-minute window from 11 p.m. to 11:50. I had found a block of phone calls and text messages between Sherry and a 502 area code, which came back to the Kentucky area. And there were phone calls that were made and received to this number during the time that she claimed she was asleep the night of Fred's murder. That was a big alarm bell. This number wasn't found in her previous calls list. That tells me she deleted all of the phone calls she had made during the time period where she claimed she was asleep. I knew then Sherry has a lot of information that she's keeping from me, not only now, but since the very first moment of the investigation. I also had cellular data that showed Timmy Rogers' cell phone leaving a hotel in Myrtle Beach, traveling to the crime scene, traveling back to Kentucky at the exact same time that Sherry Engel decided to return back to Kentucky. All of these pieces of information coming together has just made Timmy Rogers the prime suspect in Fred Engel's murder. They said, yep, he's been staying here off and on for months. They said he had a small Chevrolet pickup that was burgundy or maroon in color. And they had seen Sherry and Timmy in a passionate embrace that included tongue kissing in the lobby of the hotel. He obviously has a very close relationship with Sherry, and lots of information had come from Sherry's family. They all had begun to think that Sherry may be involved in Fred's death.
Sherry's family really love Fred and are very eager to talk to the police. She has been seen several times with Timmy Rogers, especially around the time of planning for the funeral, whispering, going off in private, and Fred's not even cold yet.
Fred's a legitimate international businessman. I feel like Sherry believed there was a large estate that she would inherit. All of these pieces of information that I had were starting to come together, and I had enough probable cause to seek arrest warrants for Timmy Rogers and Sherry Engel. We found Sherry coming out of a drugstore. Her whole demeanor changed, her eyes sunk, and she knew exactly why we were there. Timmy was located at his residence. He didn't provide any resistance whatsoever. My initial impression of Timmy Rogers, he seemed large enough and physically capable of actually doing this. A 6'4" guy that literally used to be a lumberjack.
I'm gonna have a lot of questions for you.
Okay.
We're gonna try to treat you with respect, and we hope you'll do the same thing.
And I'm just a little bit slow on my answers for things. I've had a lot of stuff lately. I went through a divorce and everything. I haven't got through all that, so I'm gonna try to answer as good as I can. You know?
Okay.
We are dealing with a lot of circumstantial evidence. There is no DNA. It was going to be a challenge at convicting two people.
I felt like that would be important to our prosecution team to get at least one of these people on board and break the case.
Fred was just a genuine person. They did go to Holland, and they did bring back my granddaughter a pair of wooden shoes.
Sherry and Fred didn't appear to have any problems at all.
I was shocked to even hear that Sherry was even considered a suspect. I could not believe it, not at all.
So where are you living at now?
When I got a divorce a little over a year ago, my wife took everything, and I've been living in a motel in E-Town.
With Timmy's demeanor, I didn't feel like I could push him very far, very fast. And I wanted him to feel like he could talk to me.
What happened with your previous marriage?
We were married for almost 20 years. I thought everything was fine for a while there, but she had got a job, and the guy she was working with and stuff, we had problems.
Was she having some kind of...
Yeah, she was having a thing with him. Mm-hmm. And then she finally came out and told me she was in love with him and stuff. And she didn't love me anymore.
Yeah, it's hard, I understand. Dealing with somebody that long, we have a lot of feelings, a lot of emotion, a lot of connection. Nobody's perfect, and I'm sure there was issues on both sides there.
I never cheated. I never did anything wrong.
What kind of excuses did she give you?
I don't know. It's just, I keep blaming myself.
Right.
And Sherry's the one that was keep telling me it's not my fault. Anytime I bring something up, she'd say it's not my fault. She made me realize, a lot of it was she.
Right.
It was really important to me to begin opening up the conversation about his relationship with Sherry. And that's the goal, to give them some sort of stimulus that causes them to provide information about the case.
You ever been to Myrtle Beach before?
Yes.
When'd you been there?
Well, actually, Sherry was helping me. She said there were plenty of jobs and stuff down there, so I went down there for a while and applied for jobs.
What kind of relationship you guys have?
She helps a lot, She just talks to me when I get depressed and stuff, from things.
You ever stayed at her house? Why not?
No.
She's a good friend. Why couldn't you stay with her?
Because she was married.
When I asked him why he didn't stay with Sherry, I made a note. It seemed to panic Timmy. I even leaned forward to see if he could figure out exactly what I was writing down. I knew that was a button I could go back and push and amp up that stress level anytime I needed to. That's a very valuable tactical tool.
How often do you talk with Sherry on her cell phone stuff?
Oh gosh, just about once a day.
You guys kind of developed a relationship, friendship, really close?
Yeah, real close.
Has it gone anything beyond that?
No, gosh, no.
You should.
But, yeah, but she's been there for me all the time. I mean, she's been kind of my angel, you know. That's the way I always told her. I always looked at her as my guardian angel.
Why do you think that is?
Because she introduced me to the Bible and everything and learning the truth.
At this point, I had been conversational. I had tried to be his friend, and that hadn't gotten very good results. So now's the time to turn up the heat.
You know what exactly we're looking into, the reason we're here, the reason we brought you in? You don't have any idea?
You told me that, or somebody told me that was arrested for the murder of Fred Engel.
Yeah, that's why we're here. That's what we do. We're not here by mistake. We know you've been dealing with Sherry. You say she's been a close friend, supporter of you, and I don't question that for a bit. But I kind of feel like the relationship might have been a little more than that. No. Before you start shaking your head and telling me no, you have to understand how many people we've spoken to. Okay. You drove your truck down to the beach. You arrived on April 8th.
Okay.
You checked into the value place.
Okay.
Staff members there, they said they've seen you guys hugging and kissing, that kind of thing.
Yeah, we'd hug and kiss, yeah. Not like that, but
Well,
yeah.
that's not the way they explained it. The way they explained it, you guys were pretty much passionately embraced to the point where they thought they were going to have to ask you to get on up to your room if there was something happening in the hallway.
Oh, gosh. They probably looked that way because she was helping me.
Not you're a good guy, but I don't think you're telling me the truth.
It was important to me to cut him off whenever I felt like he was lying, so he would understand the amount of information that I already had received, and I wanted him to understand that there were significant consequences to the crime that we were investigating.
Let me tell you something else. I know every phone call you've ever placed on that cell phone. I know every phone call you've ever received on that cell phone.
Okay.
And you talking to Sherry once a day is a lie. There's days that you talk to her as many as 20 times.
Oh, no. At least once a day.
Oh, no, that's not what you said earlier. See,
Yeah, I left it out.
I know you left it out because that was convenient at the moment. You didn't want me to know how often you talked with her, what kind of relationship you had with her.
No.
You wanted me to think you guys were just casual prayer buddies, and that's not the case at all.
Yes.
Let me tell you, brother, at this minute, I can put you in jail for the rest of your life, and that's only the good part. You know what happens to people that murder other people?
Definitely.
Think about that. Think about that for a minute.
Oh, gosh.
They do that in South Carolina.
Oh, gosh.
And at this point, I'm sitting on a mound of information that says that Timmy Rogers killed Fred Engel.
Oh, gosh.
You've got to decide right now whether you're going to get on board with telling us exactly what the deal is on this. You got to tell us, Timmy, because we look now, and you know what else? You know where Sherry's at right now?
Where?
She's at another facility. She's talking to another team of investigation, Horry County Police Department.
It was an opportunity to make Timmy believe that Sherry Engel was providing all of the gory details of this case. When people realize in those situations that someone else may be speaking for them, very often it becomes very important to them to tell their own story.
Just imagine what she's saying.
Probably the same thing I am.
I don't think she is. We've already talked with her. Before you even got here, they had her at the jail talking with her.
But she tells the truth. I mean, that's what it is.
Oh, baby, buddy.
I was really hoping to get some sort of response out of him, but once again, he was able to regain his composure and not really provide any information.
I know more about you than you think you do. I know you're a good person.
Okay.
I also know that Sherry probably put you up with this. Now y'all would have a life together, build a house. I know this stuff.
Oh, good Lord.
You drove your truck to Myrtle Beach.
Yes.
I've got people that saw your truck driving into that neighborhood with the headlights off. Now, who goes to a neighborhood that they've never been before and turns their headlights off and sneaks down to the end of the street and backs up across from the mailbox station? Timmy Rogers does, because I've got a lady that's going to sit on the stand and swear on the Bible and raise her right hand that saw you. Bet you didn't know how that, did you?
I didn't drive into no subdivision with my headlights off or nothing.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
How did it happen?
How did what happen?
The murder of Fred Engel. I think you do, Timmy.
So as this information is landing, his body is just deflating. I'm moving along at the right pace here. And the response his body's giving me is telling me that.
Right before Mr. Engel was murdered, you received a call from Sherry. A few minutes later after that, you made a call to Sherry.
What do you want to know?
I want to know why you killed him, first of all. Who did?
As meek and mild as he may have been, he stuck to his story like a champ. He would not come off of it.
What kind of relationship do you have with her?
I do care for her. Yeah.
I know you care for her.
That's the part that I'm trying to explain. It doesn't look
Let me
right.
explain, sir.
I felt like it was important to push him from another angle. He knew he was having an adulterous relationship with a married woman. I hoped that introducing that thought to Timmy would give him the motivation to speak and tell us his side of the story.
No.
How come you wearing a wedding ring?
She gave me that ring just to keep on my finger because of it just helps because I've been married for 20 years.
Let's see your face. Put your hands on the table. Palm down. You're left-handed, right?
Yes.
Right. That is not the gift of someone who just gives that to a friend. That's a wedding band.
Yeah, it's a wedding band.
How did you feel about it?
Well, at the time, I didn't know she was married.
You didn't know she was
I
married?
didn't know she was married until later.
She didn't tell you the truth. She led you along, she drug you into a relationship, and there you were. Then you found out she's married. You know what happened because you did it.
No, I didn't.
You know she talked you into it. She promised you money. She promised you whatever. She promised you the world.
No.
You wanted to get married with her.
I always did want to.
Exactly. We know that.
I know
See?
that.
That's the first time you've admitted it. Okay? You go into the penitentiary, and if you're not careful, you go into the electric chair.
Mr. Rogers,
Yes.
forget what he's saying about death penalty. Forget that, okay?
Having two investigators interrogating somebody is valuable. My partner did a great job of stepping in at any moment that he knew that something needed to be said.
She talked you in while you're vulnerable, while you're down and out. She's seen it. She's been setting you up for a year. And she's coaxed you into doing this. She's brainwashed you into going and doing something and giving you this pretense that she was going to marry you.
I didn't do nothing wrong. But I do agree that at certain times I always questioned why she would do stuff. But I always thought it was for the best, that she knew what was best for me. Because she is more intelligent than I am.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, okay, they're going to be pointing at you. Gavel, guilty. Bye-bye.
Should have never met her.
Immediately, my hopes jumped really high. It was the first time he had said anything negative about Sherry in any capacity. We had crossed a threshold where he was going to be willing to actually say what he did.
Well, meeting her has put you in a position, okay?
It looks
now
like-
is the most crucial thing.
But I care for her. I mean,
Well, I understand you
I
care
shouldn't
for
have
her.
said that. I shouldn't have said
Is
that. I wish
when
I
we
said
go back,
Be careful.
what do you want us to tell them? How sorry you are? You want to make it right? Or you want to stay with the lies that you told us today?
Make what right? That you
What
think
happened?
that I killed him?
We don't think it. We know it.
All I know to do is say, find out. I don't know. I mean, you'll find out everything about me. You'll find out that I didn't do nothing wrong.
He was just so secure in his love for Sherry and doing what he thought was the right thing for their relationship, and that was deny everything, every accusation we had.
We really didn't have any direct evidence against Timmy Rogers. And without her breaking down, I think we go a little bit better than a coin toss at convicting two people for this murder.
I had been dealing with Sherry Engel since the moment this crime occurred, and I felt like that she would be just like Timmy. She would deny everything. So I had some pieces of evidence and information about the case to cut her off.
Do you want to discuss why we're here?
I don't care. I didn't do anything.
You're saying you didn't do anything wrong, but let's go back over a little bit about what happened that night.
What I can remember, okay.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. I need my glasses to talk to you.
When did you notice this?
When I woke up at 10 minutes till 12, I didn't know that he was missing. I just woke up and knew he wasn't in the bed with me, and I got up.
Did you try calling Fred?
Did I try calling Fred? Not till we were in the end of the garage when everybody was hunting for Fred and everything. I would call, and Karen Rickerson would call, and then I'd call, and then Karen would call.
I had Sherry's cellular telephone records. I had Fred's cellular telephone records. She made no phone calls in an attempt to try to locate Fred because she already knew Fred was dead.
Unfortunately, another person was arrested up here today. Tim Rogers. You know Tim?
Yes, I know Tim.
My understanding is that he came to Myrtle Beach looking for employment.
Yes, he did.
Did he stay with you when he came down?
I beg your pardon?
Did he stay with you when he came
No,
to
sir.
Did he ever come up?
He came to the house.
He spent the night at church.
He stayed at the house, at my house.
How many times did he do that?
Probably twice, probably.
Was Fred there then?
Beg your pardon?
Was Fred at home then?
No, he wasn't. But he knew that he would have been there. I told him. I told my husband. I loved my husband. He loved me. But I needed help a lot of times when Fred wasn't there to help me.
How would you describe if someone wants to look at it?
It's like a friendship ring. It's really like a friendship ring is what I bought it for. This man was devastated. I mean, he was heartbroken.
When I presented the jewelry to Sherry that I had seized from Timmy, I thought that that may be an opportunity to push her in that emotional direction to start becoming truthful. But she was able to continue with her act and didn't really break.
We went ahead and subpoenaed phone records just to make sure.
Okay, that's fine.
Those phone records showed a lot of phone calls in that 2 hours that you were asleep.
Oh, I don't recall.
Did you recall talking to Tim?
No, sir, I don't.
You don't recall him calling you?
No, sir, I don't.
Okay. Those calls, and it shows a good period of time, and you called, and Joe's going to show you those records that you called, which will give you the date, the time, which those times following when you said you were asleep.
You woke up at 10 minutes to midnight. This right here says that you called him at 3 minutes after midnight and talked to him for 448 seconds. Explain that one to me.
Ask Karen about that. Karen was standing beside me at 12 o'clock.
Exact time frame. Right.
Actually, there's something on my phone that says, and this wasn't on here till I got to Kentucky. It says, "Hi, darling, May 26th. I love you." And that's Fred.
We're not talking about Fred. We're talking about you.
I know what you're talking about, but I'm telling you, the phone has been really messed up, and Fred knew it because he said he was going to throw it in the Waccamaw River and get me a new one.
She shifted forward and back really quickly. It was really the first time she'd shown any cracks since the beginning of the case.
And we just got through speaking with Tim for 2.5 hours, and he admitted to French kissing you.
I never French kissed him. I wouldn't even French kiss Fred, and Fred, that's something that the Europeans do.
So did you know that Tim was madly in love with you?
I thought so.
Would he have taken Fred's life so he could have been with you?
I don't know.
In my heart, I know that Tim did it. Okay, I know that Tim took Fred's life. His truck was there. You tell me, his truck was there.
I didn't know his truck was there.
I'm telling you.
I'm telling you, I did not know he was even near.
Okay, why? If he calls you and he's sitting in the mailbox.
Oh my God. Oh my
when he's at the mailbox. Hey, I'm just checking on you. I'm in the motel. Everything's all right. Are you okay? Or is he saying...
I don't recall him calling or me calling him.
It's a brief call one time and one of them. Listen to me. It's a brief call, one of them. Is that to say Fred's on his way to the mailbox and the next one was 4 minutes long for him to say, hey, I took care of it. We're on our way. I'll meet you back in Kentucky and our life is good?
Oh, but I don't recall it. I don't recall calling.
He recalls
Did he kill my husband?
Yeah.
He murdered my husband?
We're going to convict him of it. He's been...
Go ahead.
But listen to this.
No, I'll go to jail. You know what? I'll go to jail because, you know, my life's over anyway because I lost my husband.
Listen to me.
I lost the one thing that held my life together. And I stood up for what I believed in with him, hand in hand, Christ to Christ.
Let me explain something.
Jesus, thank you.
It was a significant diversion tactic for her to further paint herself as that grieving widow. So as an investigator, you have to have a skill set to be able to push through it and actually get them back on track. It was important to basically put the whole case out there. This is what we're going to put you in jail with for the rest of your life.
This is end up going to a trial. And the facts are that you knew Tim for some while. You exchanged jewelry with him. You were actually exchanged. You bought him jewelry. You paid for his motel. He came down there. He was at your house spending the night when Fred was gone. That a witness put him at the mailbox the same night, driving with no headlights on. His phone was talking to your phone talking to him. He's admitted his truck wasn't stolen, his phone wasn't stolen. You haven't said anything about your phone getting stolen. So the two people using the phones are the two of you. He's right there.
I don't recall it, sir. No, I don't recall it.
You've got some of your own family that believe that you had something to do with this. And they haven't even heard all the facts. They haven't heard it. We haven't told them. I'm going to tell you.
My brother asked me on the phone when I called today, sis, did you do it?
I'm not going to say
And I said, no, Lord, no, I didn't have anything to do with it.
This time, you need your family, okay? And I'm not trying to spread things or break you apart more. You need it more than ever. But if they've got a doubt, don't you think that total stranger, once they hear all the evidence, is going to have a doubt?
Oh, yeah. I do.
I believe there's...
But what am I supposed to do about it? I'm not...
All we're asking for is the truth. We're not trying to make you say something that's not. But I have a hard time. And so, little juror, understanding that you were asleep, you didn't answer the phone, you didn't call anybody, but yet we've got records that you did. But the court was tomorrow. How would you defend yourself against the evidence we've got?
I wouldn't.
What would you do? If you're not going to defend yourself, admit guilt?
No.
You're fighting for your life or your freedom.
I wouldn't admit guilt because I'm not guilty of anything.
She denied. She tried to divert. So the last tactic I really felt like I had left was having more pointed language, more sarcasm.
I didn't do anything.
We know the truth is more than what you told us.
I did not have anything to do with Fred's death. I'm sorry that my husband is dead. I am. You're all ripping the heart out of me. And you don't even care.
We care for Fred.
No, you don't. I cared for Fred too. I love that man with all of my heart.
That's why you slept with another man in your bed?
Do you not know that he slept with other women?
Fred did. That's the first I heard of it.
Did you not know he had affairs before he met me on his other wives?
Well, tell us about the ones with you. Did he cheat on you?
Sure he did.
Okay.
I don't know who they were.
How do you know he was cheating?
He told me. He came home and told me.
Why would he tell you that?
We had a very open marriage. I wasn't a very sexual person.
Was the marriage based solely on him getting citizenship in the United States to work?
No. I loved my husband. I did love my husband. I do love my husband. And I'll always love my husband. But I didn't kill my husband. And I didn't have anything to do with it.
We came at her from every angle we could think of, with every piece of evidence that we had, every possible emotional trigger we could come up with, and it just didn't get through to her. I did not expect to really ever speak to her again. I expected her from that point forward to have no further contact with us. About an hour and a half after that initial interview with Sherry, she relayed a message through the sheriff's office that she wanted to speak to us again. That was very surprising.
Why is it that you asked that we would come back? Has something changed or something else that you wanted to say?
Tell you what happened.
Okay.
Tell you the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I think that she understood there was a possibility that Timmy could be providing all of the information about what had happened up to that point. And I think that panicked her. She trusted him enough to kill her husband, but she didn't trust him enough to not rat her out for murder.
Tim kept pushing me to leave my husband and everything. I wouldn't. And I didn't want to leave my husband. I loved my husband. And he said, I can't handle the way that he treats you. He treats you like a slave. So he kept on, and I kept sort of pushing him away and trying to see him less and talk to him less and telling him, you know, it's not the right thing to do. He just got me to the point that I just broke. I said, well, just go ahead and do it if you're going to do it. He said when Fred got to the box, apparently mailing a letter, which I didn't know that he was mailing a letter after Tim had told me this.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, he said, I said, he didn't hear you? He said, no. He said, I said, what'd you do? How'd you do it? What did you do? He said, shh, you're getting too loud. I said, tell me how you did this to him.
Take your time.
He said, I hid in the bushes, and when he come up there and he was facing the mailboxes, he said, he walked up and stuck the gun to the back of his head and shot him. And then he just threw some kind of rope or something up white thing and drug him out in the woods.
Get your breath now.
Oh, God, help me. Oh,
Get your
Jesus.
breath, Sherry.
Her husband wasn't shot. Timmy lied to her, which is no surprise. Murderers tell lies. But Sherry's finally expressing some real emotion, but she's still responsible for his death. It was really important to me to make a strong effort to get her to state her actual role in this.
There's something still wrong. You still got all the phone calls back and forth between you. Tim wouldn't have pulled up, gone to the mailbox, and waited that night without knowing that Fred was going to come out. Someone had to have been in the house to get Fred to come out and say, go pay a bill or check the mail. You were involved. You had Fred go to that mailbox, either check the mail or pay a bill.
No.
Did you call him when he left on his own and say he's on the way, or?
You come across with part of the truth. We need all of it.
I think so, yes. Yes.
You think so? What?
Yes.
Guess what?
Yes, I did call him.
Called Tim.
Yes.
And said what? Remember one
He's
of those,
leaving?
Did he suggest that you tell Fred to go to the mailbox or something to get him out of the house?
Yes.
Okay. So he said,
Get him go to the mailbox somehow.
To have her finally provide that information was such a relief. She essentially dispatched her own husband to his own death. And the only way I knew that for sure is Sherry England confessed to it.
how do you feel with yourself knowing that you had kind of helped arrange this?
Unforgivable.
unbelievable.
This case was never a slam dunk, but when Sherry came through and told the story of what happened, now you've got direct evidence. Sherry's interrogation was so important to this case that I chose to turn Sherry as a state's witness.
Sherry Engel is a master manipulator. She's a person that holds ill will in her heart for many people, and in this particular case, that manifested itself in murder. The saddest aspect of this case is the effort and the devotion and the love that Fred Engel had for his wife.
I would like people to remember Fred Engel for the man that he was. He was hardworking, he was generous, he was friendly, just a really nice guy. Sherry wrote us a letter saying, please come to the prison where I can explain myself. You don't have to explain yourself to me. You explain yourself to God.
The night was heavy in Waco, Texas, when a call came in. A neighbor had seen something, or maybe thought they did. Lights flickering across the empty lot, shadows dancing in the brush. No one imagined it would mark the beginning of a story that would linger in the minds of investigators for nearly 2 decades. In the quiet hum of the police radio, a single dispatch cut through. Possible disturbance at 1423 Oakwood Drive. Check it out. The officers arrived to a scene that would remain etched in memory long after the initial shock faded. A small, modest house, the porch lights swinging gently in the night breeze, a door ajar. Inside, the air was thick, heavy with the metallic tang of blood and fear, the room in chaos. It wasn't just the mess. It was the absence, the uncanny emptiness where life should have been. Jared Thompson, a 27-year-old accountant, was gone. His car still in the driveway, keys in the ignition, coat draped over the back of a chair as if he had just stepped out for a moment. But he never returned. The scene spoke volumes without words. A toppled chair, a broken lamp, the faint trace of a struggle in the living room. Officers scoured the house, looking for anything, clues, evidence, signs of forced entry. Nothing made sense. No fingerprints beyond Jared's. No sign of robbery. The television was off. Dinner untouched. Everything indicated that Jared had simply vanished in a thin air. As the night deepened, investigators began piecing together his last known movements. Colleagues confirmed he had left the office late, as usual, taking the same route home along the quiet streets lined with oaks and maples. A neighbor recalled hearing a dog bark around 10:15 p.m., an anxious, repetitive barking, then silence. Surveillance cameras from a nearby gas station revealed his sedan passing the intersection at 10:07 p.m., headlights cutting through the dark. After that, nothing. No traffic cams, no witnesses. The trail vanished as abruptly as Jared himself. Detective Maria Delgado was assigned the case, her reputation for solving complex disappearances preceding her. She arrived at the scene with a calm intensity, surveying the living room with sharp, deliberate eyes. Her team had seen missing persons before, but there was something about this case, a subtle, almost imperceptible irregularity that gnawed at her instincts. The house was untouched, yet the tension was palpable. It whispered secrets. Each corner held a story just beyond reach, a narrative dangling in the shadows. Maria's experience told her that in cases like these, the devil was in the detail. The initial interviews yielded fragments, inconsistencies, small contradictions that seemed irrelevant at first. A friend claimed Jared had plans to meet someone that evening, though no one could confirm the meeting. A former co-worker mentioned a recent argument over money, but specifics were scarce. Even his family, cooperative and shaken, could offer little beyond emotional testimony and fond memories. The investigators had names, but no leads. It was as if the city itself had swallowed him whole. Weeks turned into months. The city of Waco buzzed with rumors. Posters appeared on lampposts, supermarket bulletin boards, and local cafes. Missing, Jared Thompson. Last seen March 15, 2005. Please call Waco PD with any information. Citizens whispered theories. Kidnapping, foul play, running away. But deep down, few believed he had just vanished by choice. The community felt the lingering chill of unanswered questions, the type of fear that doesn't announce itself in headlines, but seeps into the rhythm of everyday life. In the absence of new leads, detectives focused on forensic evidence. The living room was photographed extensively. Fibers, smudges, traces of DNA were cataloged meticulously. A strand of hair, found near the broken lamp, was preserved. Blood samples were tested against existing databases. The initial lab results were inconclusive. The hair belonged to no known suspect. The blood matched Jared. That much was certain. But beyond that, the trail went cold. No prints, no video evidence, no digital footprint that could reveal his whereabouts. The case began to settle into the infamous category of unresolved disappearances, a cold case whispered about in precincts, revisited only when another missing person stirred similar patterns. Detective Delgado refused to let it die quietly. She revisited the crime scene repeatedly, sometimes alone, sometimes with her team. She reconstructed the night in her mind, pacing the rooms, considering angles, possibilities, outcomes. She interviewed friends and colleagues again, looking for inconsistencies, anything overlooked. She mapped out the entire neighborhood, scrutinizing exits, hiding spots, and escape routes. Yet each line of inquiry seemed to end in shadows. It was as if the house, the street, and the city had conspired to erase him. Community involvement offered a thin thread of hope. Local media covered the disappearance extensively. Calls poured in, most useless, some conflicting. An anonymous tip claimed Jared had been seen at a bar on the outskirts of town that night. Another said he had entered a vehicle with unknown occupants. Each lead, no matter how promising, dissolved into uncertainty upon investigation. Detectives combed through local hospital records, flight manifests, bus stations, but nothing concrete emerged. Weeks turned into months, months into years. Jared's name faded from everyday conversation, but remained alive in the hearts of those who loved him, a ghost lingering at family dinners, birthdays, and anniversaries. In 2006, the case entered a deeper freeze. Resources were limited. Other cases demanded attention. Investigators archived the files, cataloging evidence for future examination. The hair sample and trace DNA were stored in evidence lockers, their potential untapped. Cold cases have a peculiar rhythm. The world moves on, but time does not erase the traces left behind. Maria Delgado knew that, even dormant, the case retained its pulse, a hidden signal waiting for the right technology, the right break. She never stopped checking databases, following leads, revisiting overlooked possibilities. By 2009, forensic science had advanced. DNA analysis techniques, once slow and rudimentary, had evolved. The rise of national databases allowed for cross-referencing evidence in ways previously impossible. Maria requested a re-examination of all biological material collected at the scene. The process was painstaking, but it rekindled a flicker of hope. Every swab, every fiber, every trace of saliva, blood, or hair had a story yet untold. The labs worked tirelessly, applying new methods, enhancing sequences, building profiles that could one day link a shadow to a face. Despite progress in the labs, the human element remained elusive. Witnesses aged, memories faded, alibis grew murky. Community interest ebbed and flowed, a tide of attention punctuated by anniversaries and fleeting news stories. The story of Jared Thompson, once front-page material, had become a quiet echo in the collective consciousness. Yet for Maria, for those who had walked through that broken house and felt the chill of absence, the story was far from over. The city may have moved on, but she carried the night of March 15th, 2005, with her, every creak of a floorboard, every flicker of a light, every shadow that could harbor a truth still unknown. It wasn't until 2010, 5 years later, that a minor breakthrough hinted at the possibility of resolution. A technician noted a partial match in the system, a connection so tenuous it nearly slipped past unnoticed. But Maria's instincts were sharp. She pursued it. It led to a background check, a shadowed history of minor offenses, a trail of movements that could, if pieced together, intersect with Jared's disappearance. The details were maddeningly incomplete, tantalizing yet frustrating. Each lead was a fragment, a puzzle missing its center. The cold case lingered in the department's files, a silent specter. Other cases came and went, murders, robberies, accidents, but this one remained special in its haunting emptiness. Community members occasionally resurfaced, offering recollections, tips, even confessions of mistakes or misremembered details. None proved conclusive. The sense of frustration was compounded by the persistence of unanswered questions. Who would take a man from his home without trace? Why him? Why then? Each possibility seemed to twist into a dead end, leaving the investigators with only a gallery of shadows and the enduring ache of what could not be explained. Maria Delgado refused to let the case die quietly in a filing cabinet. She returned again and again to the scene in her mind, replaying the night's events as if through a projector, studying each frame for something missed, some flicker of motion or sound that might reveal the truth. She consulted colleagues in other states, experts in behavioral profiling, DNA analysis, and cold case strategy. The web of potential explanations was vast. Stranger abduction, someone known, a robbery gone wrong, a calculated plan meant to erase a person without a trace. Every theory had holes, every lead unverified, yet she pursued them all, methodically, relentlessly, aware that sometimes breakthroughs come from the smallest, most overlooked fragment. And so, for the first chapter of this story, the city slept on, unaware that beneath the quiet streets and suburban lawns, a mystery remained unsolved. A man was missing, a family waited in agonizing limbo, and a detective held the case like a pulse against her own chest, feeling its rhythm in the empty spaces of a house that once held life, laughter, and normalcy. The first year, the first 5 years, the first decade, the evidence, though stored, waited silently for the day it could speak louder than shadows, for science to whisper secrets that human memory had long abandoned. This was the beginning of a journey that would stretch across time, testing technology, patience, and the limits of human resolve, a cold case that refused to fade, a story that demanded to be told. The following years were a testament to frustration and persistence. Waco moved forward, but the shadow of Jared Thompson's disappearance lingered, a faint but unrelenting echo in every quiet street, every empty lot. Investigators continued to probe, scanning the city for irregularities, revisiting the old interviews, reviewing minor tips dismissed in the early stages. Every detail was reconsidered. The hair sample, the broken lamp, the subtle smudge on the living room wall, all these fragments of evidence were subjected to newer, more precise DNA methods, with the hope that the mystery might finally begin to unravel. The science of forensics advanced rapidly, yet the human element remained elusive. Memories faded, witnesses moved away, and the city's collective attention shifted, but the investigation pressed on. Detective Maria Delgado had become a guardian of this case, refusing to let time erase its urgency. She revisited the crime scene in her mind countless times, imagining all possibilities. A stranger's calculated act, someone close harboring a secret, a violent impulse that left nothing but silence behind. Each theory was tested, discarded, or refined, yet none fit perfectly. In 2011, nearly 6 years after Jared's vanishing, a break came through an unexpected channel. A routine check of national DNA databases flagged a potential match. It was incomplete, fragmentary, barely more than a whisper in the system, yet Maria's instincts screamed that it could be significant. The match led to a man with a minor criminal history, a pattern of misdemeanors, nothing violent, but the location records placed him in the general area of Waco around the time of Jared's disappearance. The connection was tenuous, circumstantial at best, but it provided a direction where none had existed for years. The team began to follow this thread meticulously, tracing bank records, mobile phone activity, and public records. Each lead required painstaking validation. Every fragment of information was weighed against the possibility that it could either illuminate or mislead, prolonging the agony of uncertainty. As the investigation deepened, Detective Delgado began to re-examine Jared's social circles, old acquaintances, co-workers, anyone who might have had a motive, no matter how obscure. Friends remembered his meticulous habits, his calm demeanor, and the subtle anxieties he carried in private. Colleagues recounted late-night discussions about finances and office politics, minor disputes that, under scrutiny, could reveal the tiniest fissures in relationships. One coworker mentioned Jared's unease about an unexpected phone call weeks before he disappeared, a conversation that seemed trivial at the time, but now hinted at a larger, unseen tension. The team pieced together his final days with obsessive care, mapping routines, interactions, and minor anomalies, building a narrative that was as detailed as it was incomplete. Community involvement remained intermittent but critical. Occasional tips surfaced, some credible, many misleading, yet each had to be pursued. An anonymous caller reported seeing a vehicle matching the description of a man linked to the DNA tip parked near Oakwood Drive late the night of the disappearance. Investigators pored over the area, retracing routes, analyzing traffic patterns, seeking witnesses who could confirm movements. Each potential sighting required corroboration. The city, despite its growth and bustle, still held spaces of quiet mystery. Alleys, wooded patches, abandoned lots that could conceal a truth long buried. Residents became both observers and unwitting participants, their memories and accounts forming the patchwork framework upon which the case teetered. Technological advances fueled hope in other areas as well. Surveillance camera systems had improved since 2005, offering new methods to track movement, though coverage at the time of Jared's disappearance was sparse. Investigators revisited old footage repeatedly, enhancing images, adjusting lighting, isolating frames. Each pixel was scrutinized for shadows, movements, anything that might indicate a figure, a vehicle, or an unusual event. Even minor inconsistencies in the recorded timelines were analyzed rigorously, seeking patterns invisible to the casual observer but potentially crucial in reconstructing the night's events. The psychological aspect of the case remained as complex as the technical. Behavioral profilers were consulted, offering insights into potential perpetrators, examining the possibility of premeditation, impulsive action, or opportunistic violence. Jared's personality, habits, and social interactions were dissected to understand who might have had access or motive. Nothing concrete emerged, but each layer added texture to the investigation. These profiles became guides, hypothetical constructs against which leads were tested. Sometimes they suggested action, sometimes dead ends, but they never permitted complacency. Over time, patterns emerged in the absence itself. Jared's disappearance mirrored no typical missing person scenario. No ransom demands, no contact, no sightings confirmed. It was as though he had been carefully erased. The neighborhood absorbed the unease quietly. Houses remained lived in. Life moved forward, but the emptiness at 1423 Oakwood Drive persisted symbolically. Friends and family navigated their lives in the shadow of uncertainty. Anniversaries marked with quiet reflection. birthdays remembered with absence, holidays tempered by lingering doubt. The emotional residue of unresolved disappearance is subtle, pervasive, an unspoken tension woven into the fabric of a community's collective memory. By 2013, almost a decade had passed. The case was no longer front-page news, yet Maria Delgado continued her vigil. Every year, she requested re-examinations of DNA evidence, revisited archived witness statements, and followed up on even the most minor leads. Each new iteration of forensic technology brought hope. Next-generation sequencing, more comprehensive databases, advanced analytical techniques. The case file thickened with annotations, cross-references, and potential connections, but the essence of the mystery remained. Jared was gone, and the reasons why were as elusive as ever. A turning point came in 2015. The DNA sample, reprocessed using advanced techniques unavailable during the initial investigation, yielded a more precise profile. This development reopened the case with renewed vigor. Maria's team cross-referenced the profile with expanded national and state databases. A match surfaced, linking the DNA to a man with a criminal record for burglary, a history that seemed mundane yet now bore significance in the context of Jared's unexplained disappearance. This was not definitive proof of involvement, but it was enough to justify renewed scrutiny, interviews, and surveillance. It was enough to reignite the sense of urgency that had faded with time. Investigators revisited the man's known associates, his residences, employment history, and travel patterns. The team sought connections to Jared's life, anyone who might explain proximity or motive. Each question was delicate. The passage of time complicated recollection, records had gaps, and alibis were sometimes unverifiable. Yet persistence was relentless. Maria Delgado pursued every potential lead with unwavering intensity. She had come to understand that breakthroughs in cold cases often arrive from convergence. A detail overlooked, a witness remembered, or technology catching up to the evidence. Public interest rekindled with subtle news coverage. Local media revisited the cold case anniversary, highlighting the persistence of investigators and the enduring mystery of Jared Thompson. The community, long habituated to uncertainty, responded with renewed curiosity. Calls and tips began to trickle in again, often fragments, sometimes unreliable, yet all were treated with meticulous care. Each narrative offered by a witness or a passerby was evaluated against the emerging DNA lead, the reconstructed timeline, and the growing body of circumstantial evidence. The interplay between science, human memory, and community observation created a complex web, one in which every thread mattered. Through it all, Detective Delgado remained a constant presence. Her dedication was personal, almost visceral. She could not release the tension of uncertainty, could not allow the file to gather dust. Each night she reviewed photographs, crime scene diagrams, and lab reports, mentally pacing the living room where Jared had vanished. Each creak of floorboard in her imagination, each imagined shadow across the walls, was part of her process to visualize what had occurred, to anticipate what had been missed. Cold cases, she understood, are not only about evidence. They're about persistence, intuition, and the unwillingness to accept finality in the face of ambiguity. By 2016, 11 years since the disappearance, the cold case was on the cusp of revelation. DNA technology, now vastly improved, promised matches previously impossible. Investigators worked tirelessly to correlate data, review prior leads, and pursue the smallest avenues. Every detail from Jared's last night, minute habits, neighborhood patterns, and personal interactions, was re-examined for relevance. The puzzle pieces, once scattered and disconnected, began to hint at a possible arrangement, though the final image remained obscured by shadow. The city, meanwhile, had transformed around the mystery. New homes, new businesses, and a new generation of residents who had never known Jared's face or story filled the streets. Yet the echo of March 15, 2005, lingered. Those who remembered the case, family, friends, neighbors, and detectives, felt the persistent pull of unresolved events. Missing persons leave gaps, not only in their own lives, but in the emotional landscape of those around them. For Maria Delgado, the case was never just professional. It was a haunting, a riddle, a test of endurance against time itself. And so the stage was set. Evidence, technology, intuition, and persistence converged. The story of Jared Thompson's disappearance, once dormant, began to stir with the first hints of revelation. The shadow of uncertainty remained, but for the first time in over a decade, the possibility of illumination glimmered. A DNA match, the faintest whisper in a long, silent room, carrying with it the potential to shatter old assumptions and expose truths that had been buried for years. The journey into the heart of this cold case was far from over. In fact, it was only beginning to awaken. The DNA match was subtle at first, barely a flicker in a system inundated with thousands of profiles, yet held the power to transform years of uncertainty into a focused pursuit. Maria Delgado stared at the printout in her hand, her pulse quickening despite a decade of experience. The profile pointed to a man named Curtis Mallory, a drifter with a scattered history, minor arrests for burglary and petty theft, but nothing violent on record. At first glance, he seemed an unlikely candidate, a man who might wander through life unnoticed, a shadow moving at the edges of society. Yet the data placed him in Waco during the critical window of March 2005, a faint imprint connecting him to Jared's vanishing night. Investigators moved cautiously, aware that time had blurred memories and evidence alike, yet the tantalizing possibility of closure demanded action. Teams were mobilized, and the investigation pivoted toward Curtis Mallory's known haunts. Apartments, motels, storage units, acquaintances, all were canvassed meticulously. Interviews revealed fragments of his life: transient work, short-lived friendships, unexplained absences, and a tendency to vanish without explanation. None confirmed a direct connection to Jared, yet every detail hinted at movement and opportunity. Surveillance records were revisited, neighborhood witnesses re-interviewed, and even casual remarks made years before were scrutinized for overlooked significance. The investigators operated with the precision of surgeons, dissecting every hint, aware that one misstep could squander the only viable path forward. Forensic teams revisited all evidence from Jared's house. The hair sample, once inert, now carried renewed promise. Fiber analysis, fingerprints, and trace DNA were examined in the context of Curtis Mallory's history. Investigators sought overlap, locations, known associates, vehicles, behaviors that might anchor him to the scene. Each fragment of evidence was cross-referenced with databases, timelines reconstructed with painstaking accuracy. The minutiae of movement, leftover receipts, timestamps, even utility records, were re-evaluated to see whether they could provide the thread needed to tie Curtis to Jared's disappearance. In cases long dormant, such precision is the difference between speculation and revelation. Interviews were tense. Curtis Mallory, when located, presented a calm, guarded demeanor. He denied knowing Jared, denied any involvement, and offered no information beyond a bare-bones account of his past whereabouts. Detectives scrutinized his body language, tone, and inconsistencies, but nothing definitive emerged. Witness recollections from a decade prior were fragmentary, distorted by time and memory. Yet the DNA match could not be ignored. The investigation demanded persistence, a relentless pursuit of patterns, anomalies, and connections that might have been invisible to less dedicated eyes. Family and friends of Jared Thompson watched cautiously, hope tempered by years of disappointment. Each new development was a double-edged sword, a spark that threatened to illuminate truths long buried, yet also a potential reminder of heartbreak if it fizzled into dead ends. The emotional weight of unresolved cases is compounded by anticipation. Every lead is scrutinized not only for investigative value, but for its capacity to either heal or reopen wounds. The community, too, remained alert, Residents who remembered the disappearance were drawn once again into the orbit of uncertainty, watching news reports, speculating, sharing recollections that might, in the right context, prove crucial. The investigation expanded outward, mapping potential networks and interactions. Social connections, both fleeting and enduring, were traced with painstaking care. Investigators looked for anyone who might have witnessed an interaction, overheard a conversation, or noticed unusual behavior around the night of March 15, 2005. Even the smallest anecdote, a car parked too long, a light in a house that never should have been on, was cataloged and considered. Time had frayed the edges of memory, yet human observation, no matter how delayed, retained the potential to pierce the veil of mystery. As the DNA lead intensified focus on Curtis Mallory, detectives began reconstructing his movements during the critical period. Motel receipts, employment logs, and surveillance from convenience stores and gas stations were scrutinized to determine whether he had opportunity in proximity. Minor discrepancies in travel records, once ignored, now became points of interest. Investigators considered transportation options, patterns of activity, and the possible logistics of an abduction. Every scenario was weighed against the available evidence, tested for plausibility. The exercise was exhaustive, designed to illuminate possibilities and eliminate inconsistencies. Pressure mounted on Maria Delgado and her team. Cold cases are not only a matter of evidence. They're a crucible of patience and endurance. Months passed with incremental progress, small validations of movement, subtle alignments of timelines, and fragments of corroborating evidence. The city, largely unaware of the meticulous work behind the scenes, carried on, but for those in the investigation, each day brought the haunting rhythm of unanswered questions. The stakes were personal as much as professional. The human cost of disappearance is profound. The gnawing uncertainty, the fragile hope, the ongoing grief. And those who sought truth carried the weight of all that unresolved anguish. Then, in late 2016, a breakthrough occurred. Forensic analysis of the hair and trace DNA collected from Jared's home revealed a definitive match to Curtis Mallory, confirming beyond doubt that he had been in the house the night of the disappearance. The revelation sent shockwaves through the investigative team. Years of painstaking work, incremental progress, and unwavering persistence had converged in a moment of clarity. The evidence, long dormant, now carried undeniable significance. Curtis Mallory was no longer a distant, theoretical suspect. He was directly connected to the scene of crime. Armed with this confirmation, investigators intensified interviews and surveillance. Curtis's past acquaintances were questioned anew. His movements were traced with precision. Investigators explored possible motives, financial, personal, opportunistic, but the narrative remained incomplete. Curtis continued to deny involvement, offering carefully constructed accounts that provided no clarity. Yet the DNA evidence could not be disputed. Forensic science had spoken where memory and testimony had faltered. The puzzle pieces were aligning, yet the full picture, the circumstances of Jared's disappearance, what had transpired that night, and the ultimate fate of the young man, remained obscured. Community interest surged once more. Local media covered the DNA breakthrough, emphasizing the persistence of law enforcement and the significance of modern forensic techniques. Public response was intense, a mix of relief that the case was moving forward and anxiety over what the revelation implied. Friends and family were drawn back into a vortex of hope and fear, wary of the emotional roller coaster that often accompanies advances in cold case investigations. For Maria Delgado, the public reaction was secondary to the meticulous work ahead. Every question needed answering, every possibility examined, every loose end explored. The investigation moved into new phases. Surveillance footage from the night of the disappearance was re-examined in light of the DNA match. Neighborhood witnesses were revisited with renewed urgency, asked to recall any interactions or observations related to Curtis Mallory's presence in the area. Minor details, footprints, tire tracks, patterns of behavior were reassessed looking for points of intersection with known timelines. Each fragment of evidence was now viewed through a focused lens, calibrated by the certainty that Curtis had been in Jared's home. As the pursuit continued, patterns of human behavior were scrutinized. Investigators considered impulsive acts versus premeditated planning, looking for signs in Curtis's history that could explain actions that had left no immediate trace. Social dynamics, financial interactions, and personal conflicts were analyzed to reconstruct potential motives. The work required synthesizing decades of behavioral studies, forensic data, and circumstantial evidence to create plausible narratives that could be tested and, ideally, corroborated. Throughout this period, Maria Delgado maintained a relentless pace. She reviewed case files daily, cross-referenced timelines, and coordinated with forensic experts to ensure the integrity of the evidence chain. Each night, she revisited the scene in her mind, reconstructing the last known movements of Jared Thompson with vivid intensity. The process was exhausting, both mentally and emotionally, yet indispensable. Cold cases demand such vigilance, as even a single overlooked detail could determine the difference between resolution and perpetual uncertainty. By 2017, the case had fully entered the public consciousness again. News outlets provided updates on the DNA match, highlighting the extraordinary patience and dedication of the investigative team. Citizens who had lived through the initial disappearance engaged with renewed interest, offering recollections and tips that, when cross-referenced with the DNA confirmation, began to generate leads worth pursuing. The city, once lulled into passive acceptance of the mystery, now confronted the reality that Jared Thompson's story might finally be understood. Detective Delgado knew that the hardest part of any cold case was still ahead, translating scientific confirmation into narrative clarity. DNA evidence confirmed presence, but not intent, action, or consequence. Every hypothesis needed validation. Curtis Mallory's interactions, potential motives, and behaviors had to be reconstructed with rigor and caution. Investigators carefully documented every step, understanding that errors at this stage could jeopardize not only the investigation, but the eventual pursuit of justice. The breakthrough reverberated through the department, energizing a team that had endured years of frustration and uncertainty. Meetings became more focused, strategies more refined. Evidence, once scattered and inert, now carried urgency. Analysts worked overtime, revisiting minor fragments of physical evidence, connecting them to the DNA match, looking for the smallest discrepancies or confirmations that could expand understanding. Every lead, no matter how trivial it had seemed before, was evaluated for relevance. The narrative of Jared Thompson's disappearance was beginning to take shape, yet it remained incomplete. The DNA match confirmed presence, but questions loomed. What transpired in the house that night? How had Curtis Mallory entered, and for what purpose? Where did Jared go, and why had no further trace been left behind? Each unanswered question heightened tension, both in the investigative team and within the community that had waited over a decade for resolution. Persistence, science, and intuition were converging, but the final answers still hung tantalizingly out of reach. The case, now undeniably linked to Curtis Mallory, was no longer a dormant cold file. It had become a dynamic investigation, propelled by scientific breakthroughs, dogged determination, and the enduring human need for closure. The interplay of forensic evidence, witness recollection, and behavioral analysis created a complex narrative web. Investigators moved through it with care, aware that each step had consequences, each decision could open or close doors, and every detail, no matter how small, might illuminate the path toward understanding what had happened that night in March 2005. The confirmation of Curtis Mallory's presence in Jared Thompson's home ignited a chain reaction of investigative activity. Maria Delgado and her team moved with unprecedented intensity, understanding that years of delay had only amplified the stakes. Every detail, every witness recollection, every minor trace of evidence collected in 2005 was reevaluated through the lens of this new certainty. The house, once a silent relic of disappearance, became a focal point once again, each creak of the floorboards and every shadow in the corners imagined with fresh scrutiny. Investigators reconstructed Jared's final hours with painstaking care, tracing each movement, mapping each interaction, and overlaying Curtis's possible trajectory with unnerving precision. The night of March 15th unfolded in their minds like a replay of a film whose ending remained obscured, a tense sequence built of fragments, shadows, and speculation. Investigators re-interviewed neighbors, many of whom had long assumed that time had buried the truth. At first, recollections were vague, clouded by the passage of 11 years. Yet as questioning intensified, memories shifted and sharpened. One neighbor remembered seeing a man loitering near Jared's driveway shortly after 10 p.m., his movements furtive, his posture tense. Another recalled a strange vehicle parked along the curb, idling briefly before disappearing into the darkness. These recollections, previously dismissed as insignificant or inconsistent, now gained relevance in the context of the DNA evidence. Each detail was meticulously logged, analyzed, and cross-referenced against Curtis Mallory's known habits, his residences, and his recorded whereabouts during that period. The investigators' attention to minutiae was relentless, a testament to the patience demanded by cold cases where decades of ambiguity could be shattered by a single, overlooked observation. Forensic analysis expanded beyond the hair and trace DNA. Investigators re-examined fingerprints on the broken lamp, smudges along door frames, and fibers on furniture. Even the minutest elements were reconsidered. The scuff marks on the floor, the residue of dried blood on a corner table, the slight disturbance of household items, all became potential indicators of struggle, direction, or presence. Fiber and trace evidence analysts compared samples against known items in Curtis Mallory's history, including clothing, bedding, and personal effects documented in prior arrests. Every microscopic clue was a potential key to unlocking the sequence of events that had left Jared vanished and the community in shock for over a decade. While forensic efforts proceeded, the investigative team dug into Curtis's history with renewed vigor. Employment records, travel logs, temporary addresses, and known associates were meticulously mapped. Patterns emerged, subtle but suggestive. Brief stints at construction sites, overnight stays in motels near Waco, repeated movement along certain routes. Analysts sought correlations between Curtis's locations and the neighborhood around Oakwood Drive, searching for points of intersection with Jared's last known movements. Each potential connection was explored, sometimes yielding corroborating evidence, sometimes dead ends. The work required patience and precision, an exhaustive triangulation of human movement across space and time. Community involvement became both a tool and a challenge. The renewed attention on the case provoked long-suppressed recollections. Some neighbors remembered odd encounters, minor arguments overheard, a vehicle parked too long in the driveway. Tips poured in, often contradictory, yet each had the potential to shed light when aligned with physical evidence. Analysts cataloged these accounts, looking for consistencies, overlaps, and patterns. Every subtle piece of information, gestures, glances, overheard words, was evaluated for its potential significance. In cases of disappearance, the human element is often as telling as the physical evidence, a subtle behavioral footprint that can guide investigators toward truths hidden in plain sight. In parallel, Maria Delgado explored Curtis Mallory's network of acquaintances. Friends, family, and casual associates were interviewed, some reluctantly, some evasively. Recollections varied, with timelines blurred by memory and circumstance, yet small consistencies began to form a fragile framework. A recurring pattern of transient behavior emerged, suggesting a man capable of moving unnoticed, a life punctuated by sudden appearances and disappearances, always fleeting, leaving little trace. Investigators mapped this pattern against the timeline of Jared's last known movements, seeking points of opportunity where Curtis could have intersected with the young accountant's routine. The convergence of physical evidence, DNA confirmation, and behavioral patterning created a compelling but incomplete narrative. Psychological profiling played a key role. Behavioral analysts were consulted to understand Curtis Mallory's potential motives and methods. His history suggested opportunistic tendencies, a propensity for minor criminal activity, yet his interactions hinted at deeper complexity, patterns of isolation, possible resentment, and impulsive behavior. Analysts theorized how these traits could manifest in interaction with Jared, exploring scenarios from confrontation to abduction. The exercise was speculative but grounded in methodical observation of known behaviors and circumstantial context. Profiling added texture to the investigation, helping detectives visualize potential sequences of events, identify gaps, and guide further inquiry. The investigation extended to digital forensics, a domain previously untapped in 2005. Email records, phone logs, and early social media activity were scrutinized for connections between Jared and Curtis or any interactions that could suggest motive or opportunity. Even minor data points, a brief message, a forgotten call, an obscure post, were analyzed for significance. In cold cases, technology often bridges gaps left by human memory, providing objective markers that validate or challenge subjective recollections. Analysts painstakingly mapped these digital footprints, overlaying them with physical movements and witness accounts to reconstruct a timeline of events. Months of investigative effort coalesced into a more defined picture. Curtis Mallory's presence in the vicinity of Jared's home, his transient patterns, and the DNA evidence all converged to create an undeniable link. Investigators began to develop specific hypotheses about the night of March 15, 2005, reconstructing potential interactions, movements, and opportunities. Yet questions remained. What was the precise sequence of events? What actions had Curtis taken inside the house? How had Jared responded? And what had led to his disappearance without trace? Each question was a puzzle piece, tantalizingly close to placement, but requiring further validation. The pressure on the investigative team intensified. With a credible suspect identified, urgency became paramount. Legal channels were navigated to obtain warrants, examine additional records, and initiate controlled interviews. The complexity of a decade-old case required meticulous preparation to avoid compromising evidence or procedural integrity. Every step was carefully documented, every action weighed against potential outcomes. The stakes were not only investigative, but legal, emotional, and societal. A decade-long absence weighed now against the possibility of resolution and accountability. As the investigation progressed, the psychological toll of the case became apparent. Years of ambiguity, relentless pursuit, and incremental breakthroughs created both hope and anxiety. Maria Delgado maintained focus, balancing methodical analysis with the human element, the grief, anticipation, and fear of Jared's family and the community. She understood that cold cases are as much about emotional closure as about legal resolution. Every lead could provide not only factual clarity, but also a measure of peace for those who had endured uncertainty for over a decade. By late 2017, the investigative team had built a compelling dossier on Curtis Mallory. Every movement, interaction, and pattern of behavior had been mapped and corroborated to the extent possible. DNA evidence, forensic analysis, witness recollections, behavioral profiling, and digital footprints coalesced into a framework that painted Curtis not merely as a transient presence, but as a figure plausibly responsible for the disappearance. The narrative remained incomplete. Questions persisted, but the convergence of evidence signaled that resolution was within reach. The community's reaction was a mix of apprehension and cautious optimism. Local media highlighted the renewed focus, framing the story as a triumph of persistence, technology, and meticulous investigation. Friends and family of Jared Thompson experienced a resurgence of hope, tempered by the fragility of human expectation. They were acutely aware that confirmation of DNA presence, while significant, did not reveal motive or the ultimate outcome. Yet it represented progress, a tangible shift from ambiguity toward understanding. Detective Delgado's approach remained systematic. The next phases of the investigation focused on corroborating Curtis Mallory's presence with additional evidence, records, testimonies, environmental analysis, and exploring potential motives, interactions, and scenarios consistent with known data. The case was no longer dormant. It had transformed into a dynamic, multifaceted inquiry, propelled by decades of effort converging with modern technology and investigative rigor. As winter gave way to 2018, the investigative team prepared for interviews that could finally illuminate the events of March 15, 2005. Curtis Mallory's history, behavior, and confirmed presence in Jared's home framed every question, every strategy. The long shadow of uncertainty persisted, but the evidence provided a beacon. For the first time in 13 years, the investigation seemed poised to pierce the veil of mystery that had long defined Jared Thompson's disappearance, offering the possibility of revelation, accountability, and perhaps closure. The investigation into Curtis Mallory intensified, every lead now imbued with urgency. Maria Delgado and her team methodically retraced the night of March 15, 2005, overlaying witness recollections with forensic evidence and Curtis's known movements. Each street, each corner, each shadowed alley became part of a reconstructed narrative, a mental map of possibilities that might reveal how Jared Thompson vanished. The neighborhood, once quiet and familiar, now seemed cloaked in suspicion. Ordinary sounds, the rustle of leaves, distant car engines, a dog's bark, were imagined as potential witnesses to a night long buried in secrecy. Investigators pored over minute details, the exact trajectory of Jared's sedan, the position of furniture in his living room, even the faint scuff marks on the porch steps. Each element could be crucial, a subtle cue revealing opportunity, action, or intent. Curtis Mallory's background offered a fragmented but telling profile. A transient life, scattered employment, short-lived relationships, and a history of petty crime suggested patterns of mobility and unpredictability. Investigators theorized how someone with these characteristics might navigate a situation like Jared's disappearance, considering opportunistic motives, impulsive actions, and the capacity to leave minimal traces. The DNA confirmation transformed speculation into a tangible investigative framework, yet did not illuminate the sequence of events. What transpired inside the house remained a mystery, a dark space that could only be inferred from evidence and pattern analysis. Witnesses were re-interviewed, often recalling minor details they had long considered irrelevant. One neighbor remembered a vehicle idling unusually long near the driveway. Another mentioned a fleeting shadow moving across the front window. Investigators cataloged every detail, no matter how insignificant it seemed, understanding that cold cases often hinge on fragments overlooked or dismissed at the time. Each account was cross-referenced against Curtis's known locations and habits, every anomaly scrutinized for patterns or discrepancies. The synthesis of human memory, forensic science, and behavioral profiling became the backbone of the renewed investigation. Digital forensics played a crucial role. Email records, phone logs, and early social media interactions were mined for connections. Analysts searched for communications that might indicate premeditation, acquaintance, or opportunistic intent. Even brief, seemingly trivial interactions, forgotten calls, ambiguous messages, or overlooked digital footprints were evaluated for relevance. Each digital artifact provided context, anchoring speculation in concrete patterns and timelines. The integration of digital and physical evidence created a multidimensional view of Curtis Mallory's movements, aligning them with the reconstructed chronology of Jared's disappearance. Environmental evidence was also revisited. Weather records indicated rain that night, heavy enough to obscure tracks and wash away subtle traces. Investigators considered how this might have affected the preservation of evidence, hypothesizing that rain could explain gaps in footprints, tire marks, or other indicators of movement. Lighting conditions were analyzed, The angle of streetlights, the illumination of nearby windows, and the shadows cast across the property were meticulously mapped to determine visibility from the street. Every environmental factor became a potential clue, guiding the investigation toward the most plausible reconstruction of events. Psychological profiling provided additional insight. Analysts suggested that Curtis Mallory's transient lifestyle and history of petty crime indicated opportunistic tendencies, possibly paired with impulsivity and evasive behavior. They explored scenarios in which he might have entered Jared's home, considering whether an unplanned encounter escalated into abduction or if the act was premeditated, exploiting vulnerabilities in the household's routines. Investigators used these profiles to generate lines of questioning, identify potential witnesses, and anticipate behaviors that might explain the lack of immediate detection. The forensic team revisited physical evidence with a renewed lens. Fibers from Curtis's known clothing were compared with those recovered from Jared's home. Smudges on doorknobs and lamp bases were analyzed for unique characteristics. Even the minutiae, the orientation of overturned furniture, the pattern of broken glass, and faint marks on the carpet, were re-evaluated for indications of struggle or movement. These subtle physical cues, when considered alongside DNA confirmation, created a tapestry of interaction that pointed increasingly toward a confrontation between Curtis and Jared. Yet the exact sequence remained elusive, obscured by time and the imperfection of human and environmental factors. Community input became invaluable. Neighbors offered recollections of unusual activity, sightings of unknown vehicles, and observations of unfamiliar individuals. Some recalled minor disturbances, a flickering light, a door left slightly ajar, a shadow moving against a window that had seemed insignificant at the time. Investigators cataloged every account, seeking convergences and consistencies. Each minor detail became a thread in the complex web of reconstruction, highlighting the importance of collective memory in solving cold cases where evidence alone cannot provide the full narrative. As the investigation progressed, timelines were refined. Curtis Mallory's movements before, during, and after Jared's disappearance were reconstructed with increasing precision. Investigators mapped his known locations, overlaying them with witness accounts and forensic evidence. Subtle overlaps emerged, suggesting opportunity for the encounter, but questions remained. Did he plan the intrusion, or was it opportunistic? What prompted the interaction to escalate? And how did it result in Jared's disappearance without further trace? Every hypothesis was rigorously tested, eliminating impossibilities and focusing attention on the most plausible scenarios. The renewed focus also prompted re-examination of potential accomplices or witnesses previously dismissed. Investigators explored relationships in Curtis's transient network, searching for anyone who might have knowledge, involvement, or awareness of Jared's disappearance. Even indirect connections, temporary roommates, casual acquaintances, or work colleagues, were scrutinized. Analysts mapped these networks, assessing proximity, opportunity, and potential motive. Each connection was evaluated for relevance, its strength measured against corroborating evidence and behavioral analysis. Pressure mounted on both the investigative team and the community. Media coverage highlighted the DNA match, sparking renewed interest and speculation. Friends and family of Jared Thompson oscillated between hope and anxiety, aware that confirmation of Curtis's presence did not resolve the ultimate question of Jared's fate. The emotional intensity of cold cases is compounded by uncertainty. The promise of breakthrough is often accompanied by the specter of disappointment. Investigators were acutely aware that every step forward could reopen wounds as easily as it could provide closure. By mid-2018, patterns were becoming increasingly coherent. Curtis Mallory's confirmed presence, combined with environmental, forensic, and testimonial evidence, pointed to a plausible sequence of events. Investigators hypothesized a confrontation within Jared's home that escalated rapidly, a scenario consistent with both the physical evidence and Curtis's behavioral profile. Yet gaps persisted. Critical details, exact motives, specific actions, and the ultimate outcome remained unknown, a haunting void that underscored the challenges of cold case investigation. The team intensified efforts to locate additional evidence that could bridge these gaps. Searches of areas associated with Curtis, including prior residences, storage units, and temporary shelters, were conducted with precision. Investigators sought items or records that could corroborate the reconstructed sequence, clarify intent, or reveal the ultimate disposition of Jared Thompson. Each search was exhaustive, guided by forensic principles and informed intuition, designed to maximize the likelihood of uncovering hidden truths. Legal procedures were carefully coordinated. Warrants were obtained, interviews structured, and evidence meticulously documented to ensure procedural integrity. Investigators balanced the urgency of discovery with the need to protect the admissibility of potential evidence. Cold cases demand both rigor and patience. Any misstep could compromise the entire investigative trajectory. Maria Delgado oversaw every aspect with unwavering focus, coordinating teams, reviewing reports, and directing resources toward the most promising avenues. As the investigation entered its next phase, the psychological dimension became increasingly salient. Analysts assessed Curtis Mallory's potential reactions, considering strategies for eliciting information, anticipating evasive maneuvers, and identifying behavioral cues that could reveal inconsistencies or admissions. Every interaction, every observation, and every line of questioning was informed by a careful understanding of human behavior under stress, particularly in the context of long-concealed events. By late 2018, the momentum of the investigation had shifted decisively. DNA confirmation, refined timelines, corroborated witness accounts, and behavioral analysis had transformed a cold, dormant case into an active, high-stakes inquiry. Investigators were positioned to pursue actionable leads with a level of confidence previously impossible. Each layer of evidence, previously isolated, now converged toward a coherent, though incomplete, narrative. The question of what had happened to Jared Thompson, the sequence, the motives, the consequences, hung in the air, a suspenseful tension driving every action, every decision, every hypothesis. The stage was set for the most critical phase of the investigation. Curtis Mallory was no longer a theoretical presence, but a tangible focus, a figure whose actions, motives, and potential culpability demanded careful, methodical exploration. The convergence of science, human memory, behavioral insight, and investigative diligence promised progress. Yet the ultimate truth, the resolution of Jared Thompson's disappearance, remained tantalizingly out of reach. Every moment, every detail, and every revelation would be crucial in the pursuit of justice. And a shadow of uncertainty continued to loom over the city of Waco, a chilling reminder of the mystery that had endured for over 13 years. By early 2019, the investigation had entered a phase of unprecedented intensity. Curtis Mallory, once a shadow drifting through the edges of Waco, now dominated the focus of every operative, every analyst, and every line of inquiry. The DNA evidence, corroborated by minute physical traces in Jared Thompson's home, had transformed a long-dormant cold case into an active, high-stakes pursuit. Investigators began to probe deeper, exploring connections that had previously seemed tangential, obscure acquaintances, transient shelters, and even discarded personal effects. Each item, each conversation, each minor recollection from over a decade prior was now under scrutiny, re-examined with a precision that only years of unresolved uncertainty could instill. One breakthrough came unexpectedly. A local junkyard employee remembered seeing Curtis near the edge of the property bordering Oakwood Drive in March 2005. The recollection had seemed irrelevant at the time, a minor anecdote among countless others, yet now it offered a potential link. Investigators immediately retraced the path he might have taken, considering sight lines, lighting, and potential concealment. The terrain itself became a character in the narrative. Dense undergrowth, uneven ground, and a network of narrow paths that could conceal a person moving stealthily. Each step taken on that ground was reconstructed mentally, tested against the physical evidence collected from Jared's home. New forensic techniques allowed for the analysis of trace materials that had once been dismissed as inconsequential. Fibers, microscopic soil residues, and faint residues on clothing were examined using cutting-edge spectrometry and chemical mapping. Analysts identified compounds consistent with materials present near Oakwood Drive in 2005, suggesting movement patterns and interactions previously invisible. These subtle signals began to align with witness accounts, neighborhood observations, and the DNA confirmation linking Curtis Mallory to the scene. It was a slow, painstaking process, yet each alignment reinforced the plausibility of the reconstruction, building an increasingly coherent, but still incomplete, narrative. Investigators also revisited Curtis's known associates, probing deeper into his social network. Interviews revealed minor details previously overlooked, fleeting interactions, hints of unexplained absences, and strange behaviors that now suggested potential involvement or awareness. One former roommate recalled Curtis returning late at night, unusually agitated, with dirt on his shoes and clothing that did not match his usual routine. Though innocuous at the time, this recollection now assumed ominous significance, potentially marking the night of Jared's disappearance. Analysts cross-referenced these accounts with environmental evidence, behavioral patterns, and forensic data, seeking points of convergence that could anchor the narrative in reality. The psychological dimension intensified. Behavioral analysts developed models predicting Curtis's likely responses to investigation, potential confessions, and patterns of evasion. Each interview, each surveillance observation, and each legal maneuver was informed by these models. Investigators considered how someone with Curtis's profile, transient, opportunistic, evasive, might react under scrutiny, anticipate questioning, or attempt to manipulate the perception of events. These considerations shaped the strategy for interviews, ensuring that investigators approached interactions in ways most likely to elicit truthful information. As spring turned to summer, investigators uncovered an unusual clue: a storage unit rented under an alias associated with Curtis. Inside, minor personal effects, clothing, and discarded items hinted at transient patterns. Yet one item stood out: a notebook containing cryptic entries with dates, locations, and coded references that suggested awareness of events connected to Oakwood Drive. Analysts worked to decode the references, seeking correlations with Jared's routines and the night of the disappearance. The notebook offered tantalizing fragments of insight, but required careful interpretation. Each inference was weighed against physical evidence, witness recollections, and behavioral expectations, ensuring that speculation did not overtake verified facts. Investigators began to map the sequence of events with increasing specificity. Curtis Mallory's movements were traced with minute precision. The timing of departures, approximate locations, potential points of observation, and opportunities for interaction with Jared Thompson. The combination of DNA evidence, forensic residues, witness accounts, and behavioral profiling suggested a scenario in which Curtis had entered the home, either opportunistically or with intent, creating a confrontation that escalated rapidly. The sequence of events remained hypothetical, but the convergence of data provided a compelling framework for further exploration. Community cooperation intensified. Residents who had long harbored memories of unexplained disturbances began coming forward with minor observations. Unfamiliar vehicles, unusual sounds at night, fleeting glimpses of figures near Oakwood Drive. Investigators cataloged every detail, searching for correlations with Curtis Mallory's reconstructed timeline. These subtle recollections, when cross-referenced with forensic data and behavioral analysis, formed a lattice of possible interactions, strengthening the plausibility of scenarios previously speculative. Each fragment of memory became potentially significant, a thread in the growing tapestry of understanding. In mid-2019, a breakthrough came through environmental reconstruction. Investigators simulated movement patterns within Jared's home using furniture placement, entry points, and spatial constraints. Combined with witness recollections and Curtis Mallory's known physical dimensions and capabilities, the reconstruction suggested multiple possible paths of interaction, including potential confrontations and points where physical evidence might have been deposited or removed. These reconstructions provided a visual framework for understanding how the events of that night could have unfolded, offering critical insight into sequences previously inaccessible through direct observation or witness testimony. The renewed focus prompted re-examination of prior inconsistencies. Witnesses who had provided conflicting statements in 2005 were re-interviewed under a controlled setting, allowing investigators to cross-check recollections and identify consistencies or discrepancies. Minor discrepancies in time frames, originally dismissed, now revealed subtle patterns that aligned with reconstructed movements of Curtis Mallory. Investigators triangulated data from multiple sources: DNA evidence, environmental cues, behavioral predictions, and witness accounts, to create a multi-layered chronological map. This map, while still incomplete, offered a level of precision and plausibility never before achieved in the case. Pressure mounted on both investigative teams and Curtis himself. Legal avenues were pursued to secure additional records, examine previously overlooked locations, and conduct controlled surveillance. Every interaction was carefully documented, ensuring integrity while testing hypotheses generated through forensic and behavioral analysis. Investigators anticipated resistance, evasive maneuvers, or deliberate obfuscation, understanding that the stakes were elevated. After 14 years, the case had transitioned from unresolved mystery to active pursuit of accountability. By late 2019, investigators identified a critical anomaly: a minor discrepancy in Curtis Mallory's timeline corresponding to the hours immediately following Jared's disappearance. Records of temporary work sites, transient lodging, and brief interpersonal interactions were re-examined. One particular location, previously dismissed as unrelated, now appeared to coincide with the likely window of critical events. Surveillance footage, though grainy and partially obscured, was analyzed frame by frame, revealing fleeting movements consistent with known behaviors and environmental constraints. Each micro-observation provided incremental validation, gradually reinforcing the hypothesis that Curtis had been directly involved in the disappearance. Parallel investigations into environmental traces continued. Soil samples, clothing residues, and fibers were reanalyzed using the latest forensic methods. Minute differences in composition, previously undetectable, revealed subtle links between Curtis's known locations and the property at Oakwood Drive. Investigators overlaid this evidence onto reconstructed movement sequences, identifying potential interactions, points of struggle, and plausible deposition of materials. Each connection strengthened the narrative framework, though the precise sequence and ultimate outcome remained obscured, a dark silhouette against a landscape increasingly illuminated by evidence. As 2020 approached, the pressure to consolidate findings intensified. Maria Delgado orchestrated comprehensive reviews of all evidence, ensuring alignment across forensic analysis, behavioral profiling, environmental reconstruction, and witness accounts. Each thread was examined for consistency, each hypothesis tested against known data. The case, dormant for nearly 15 years, now pulsed with urgency, its long-dormant narrative coming alive through the meticulous integration of science, observation, and human intuition. The culmination of these efforts produced a sequence of potential events that, while hypothetical, was grounded in unprecedented convergence of evidence. Curtis Mallory's presence, behavioral patterns, environmental opportunities, and corroborated witness accounts painted a chilling picture: an opportunistic intrusion escalating into a confrontation, physical evidence deposited, and Jared Thompson vanishing without trace. Yet the final resolution, the explanation of what had transpired after confrontation, the ultimate fate of a young man, remained tantalizingly out of reach. The case, now a mosaic of insight and speculation, demanded one final breakthrough: a revelation capable of shattering the remaining veil of mystery. And so the cold case, once silent for over 14 years, stood on the precipice of revelation. Every lead, every clue, every insight gained through the relentless persistence of investigators, the evolving capabilities of forensic science, and the contributions of a community long shadowed by uncertainty had built toward a climax. Curtis Mallory's confirmed presence had provided direction, yet the ultimate truth, what truly occurred in those fleeting hours at Oakwood Drive, remained concealed, a lingering shadow poised to shock, to unsettle, and perhaps finally to illuminate. Early 2020 brought a renewed sense of urgency. Curtis Mallory's movements, his transient patterns, and the cryptic notebook discovered months prior coalesced into a narrative that hinted at hidden actions and motives, a puzzle whose edges were sharper yet still incomplete. Maria Delgado oversaw the cross-referencing of every piece of data: surveillance footage, environmental reconstruction, witness statements, forensic traces, and behavioral analysis. The convergence suggested a sequence of events more sinister than anyone had anticipated, a fleeting intersection of opportunity, impulse, and consequence that had left Jared Thompson swallowed by uncertainty. Each new detail raised the stakes, magnifying tension within the investigative team and the community that had long endured suspense. A breakthrough emerged from forensic reanalysis of minor items collected in 2005. Small residues on a doorknob and a corner of Jared's living room carpet revealed traces of a chemical consistent with materials found in Curtis Mallory's transient occupation sites. The match was subtle, almost imperceptible, but statistically significant, enough to confirm presence in multiple contexts, providing corroboration beyond DNA alone. Analysts mapped this evidence against reconstructed movements, noting precise points where Curtis could have entered, interacted, and left without immediate detection. The subtlety of these traces underscored the elusiveness of the original event, highlighting how time and environmental factors had masked actions that now, with modern techniques, were visible again. Witness interviews continued to yield fragments. A local resident recalled a late-night noise, a sound of scraping and muffled movement, barely audible, but coinciding with Curtis's reconstructed presence. Another neighbor reported seeing a shadow move in the periphery of the yard, a figure crouched, moving deliberately. These recollections, minor in isolation, gained significance when aligned with forensic confirmation and behavioral patterns. Investigators reconstructed the night hour by hour, minute by minute, overlaying human observation onto physical and chemical evidence. The narrative of March 15, 2005, slowly materialized from the fog of memory and time. Investigators expanded their focus to Curtis Mallory's network of associates, seeking anyone who might provide insight into his intentions, movements, or knowledge of Jared Thompson. Interviews were meticulous, conducted under controlled circumstances, probing behaviors, inconsistencies, and potential admissions. Patterns emerged: a tendency towards secrecy, opportunistic interactions, and occasional impulsive actions that suggested a potential escalation during encounters like the one at Oakwood Drive. Each interview was analyzed for subtle cues, inconsistencies, and unspoken admissions, all cataloged in a database to identify correlations with environmental, forensic, and behavioral data. The notebook discovered in Curtis's storage unit became a central element. Analysts decoded dates, cryptic references, and location markers, aligning them with known timelines, environmental clues, and forensic findings. Certain entries suggested awareness of surveillance, movement through specific areas, and perhaps even premeditation of actions. Investigators treated each entry with extreme caution, understanding that interpretation could influence the direction of inquiry, yet ignoring the notebook risked overlooking critical insight. Each symbol, each abbreviation, and each date was cross-referenced with every known interaction and environmental clue, generating hypotheses that were tested against physical evidence. Environmental reconstruction advanced further. Investigators employed three-dimensional modeling to simulate Curtis Mallory's potential pathways inside Jared's home. Furniture, narrow hallways, window placements, and lighting conditions were all integrated, creating scenarios that suggested plausible paths of movement, points of interaction, and potential areas where evidence could have been deposited or disturbed. These simulations, aligned with forensic residues and DNA presence, produced plausible sequences for the critical hours of March 15th. Yet, even with reconstruction, the final moments of Jared Thompson remained shrouded, a dark corridor of unresolved mystery. Behavioral profiling refined the investigation. Analysts considered Curtis Mallory's potential responses under stress, likelihood of concealment, and methods of evasion. Interviews with acquaintances provided insight into his coping strategies, tendencies toward deception, and patterns of movement. These analyses informed both questioning strategies and surveillance priorities, guiding investigators toward locations and interactions that could yield definitive information. Every observation, every reaction, and every historical pattern became a thread woven into the complex tapestry of potential truth. Forensic teams revisited minor traces of hair, fiber, and residue. Microscopic analysis revealed patterns suggesting specific interactions within the home, paths of movement, points of contact, and areas of potential struggle. These insights were subtle, often requiring repeated verification, yet they provided a framework for understanding the dynamics between Curtis Mallory and Jared Thompson. Each piece of evidence, small and seemingly inconsequential at the time, became magnified under modern analytical techniques, revealing a choreography of actions that had previously been invisible. Legal procedures intensified. Warrants were obtained to examine additional properties, storage units, and transient locations associated with Curtis. Surveillance strategies were refined, and controlled interviews were conducted with precision, ensuring that every statement and observation could be legally corroborated. Investigators balanced the need for immediate answers with the necessity of maintaining procedural integrity, recognizing that the case's ultimate resolution depended not only on evidence, but also on its admissibility in potential legal proceedings. As mid-2020 approached, investigators identified a new potential clue, an abandoned tool shed on the outskirts of Waco. Environmental analysis suggested movement consistent with Curtis Mallory's patterns, and forensic teams detected subtle traces, soil, fibers, and residues that could align with reconstructed movements from March 2005. The site was meticulously documented, mapped, and analyzed. Investigators considered how it might connect to Jared's disappearance, whether as a transit point, a hiding location, or a site of interaction. Each scenario was carefully evaluated against existing forensic and testimonial evidence. Witness engagement revealed additional anomalies. A local resident recalled a vehicle parked along a side street, engine running briefly, lights off, a fleeting figure moving around it. The timeline matched reconstructed movements of Curtis Mallory. Investigators cataloged this as a potential point of surveillance, observing behaviors consistent with opportunistic monitoring or preparation for an encounter. These fragmented memories, minor yet precise, provided a living thread connecting Curtis's presence, the environment, and the likely sequence of events inside Jared's home. Digital forensics contributed further clarity. Early cell phone records, GPS data, and social media activity were cross-referenced with physical and environmental evidence. Patterns emerged: brief stops, deviations from normal routes, and transient interactions that suggested preparation, observation, or opportunistic positioning. Each data point, however minor, reinforced the plausibility of reconstructed events. Investigators synthesized this information into a chronological map, establishing a dense, multidimensional view of Curtis Mallory's movements and potential interactions with Jared Thompson. Behavioral analysts emphasize the psychological stakes. Curtis's documented impulsivity and transient tendencies suggested a capacity for rapid escalation during encounters. Analysts theorized that a spontaneous confrontation could have precipitated the events of that night, creating a cascade of actions whose consequences left minimal physical trace, yet profound human impact. Investigators integrated these insights into both reconstruction models and interview strategies, seeking points where behavioral tendencies could intersect with physical and testimonial evidence to illuminate otherwise opaque moments. As summer 2020 progressed, the convergence of evidence, environmental reconstruction, behavioral profiling, and witness accounts reached critical density. Investigators identified multiple scenarios consistent with the collected data, narrowing possibilities while acknowledging remaining uncertainties. Each hypothesis was rigorously tested against forensic confirmation, environmental plausibility, and behavioral likelihood, resulting in a multifaceted model that approximated the likely sequence of events on March 15, 2005. Yet the final act, what ultimately befell Jared Thompson, remained concealed, a lingering shadow against the growing framework of understanding. The case now demanded synthesis. Forensic science, human memory, behavioral insight, environmental modeling, and digital analysis had each revealed fragments of truth, but only through integration could a coherent narrative emerge. Maria Delgado coordinated these efforts, ensuring that every insight was cross-validated, every hypothesis rigorously tested, and every lead pursued to its logical conclusion. The team operated under the relentless pressure of years of uncertainty, aware that the next breakthrough could finally illuminate what had remained hidden for over 15 years. Community anticipation mounted. Media coverage emphasized the ongoing investigation, noting both the scientific rigor and the emotional stakes. Residents of Waco, long accustomed to whispers and speculation, now faced a renewed confrontation with a story that had haunted them for over a decade. Friends and family of Jared Thompson oscillated between hope and anxiety, recognizing that while the investigation was approaching clarity, resolution was not yet assured. The city, caught between historical memory and contemporary revelation, braced for the next act in a drama that had been silent far too long. By the end of 2020, the framework of the night had taken shape. Curtis Mallory's presence, corroborated by DNA, physical traces, and environmental modeling, intersected with witness recollections and behavioral analysis to create a multi-layered reconstruction of March 15, 2005. Each piece of evidence, each minor anomaly, and each cryptic clue contributed to a narrative that was both chilling and precise, a story of opportunity, confrontation, and disappearance. Yet the final moments, the ultimate fate of Jared Thompson, remained shrouded, the case balanced on the precipice between resolution and enduring mystery. The first weeks of 2021 brought a tense, electric momentum. Curtis Mallory's movements, reconstructed through forensic data, witness statements, and environmental analysis, coalesced into an increasingly coherent, but still incomplete, chronology of March 15, 2005. Maria Delgado and her team understood that each new revelation could destabilize assumptions held for over 15 years. Every shadow, every discarded item, every whisper from long-suppressed memories could alter the trajectory of the investigation, shifting hypotheses from plausible to compelling. The notebook, with its cryptic dates and coded entries, had become a central artifact, a tangible thread linking the physical evidence, Curtis's behavioral patterns, and the reconstructed environment of Oakwood Drive. Analysts focused on subtle correlations. Minor scuffs on the hardwood floor, previously attributed to general household wear, aligned precisely with footprints traced through Curtis Mallory's known shoe type. Fibers from transient garments matched microscopic traces discovered in Jared Thompson's living room. Even the pattern of dirt on baseboards suggested pathways consistent with previously hypothesized movements. Each microscopic detail, when layered against witness recollections of fleeting shadows, distant engine noises, and unexplained rustling, created a lattice of plausibility, a choreography of human interaction that was both chilling and precise. Witness interviews intensified. A neighbor recounted hearing the distinct sound of glass scraping against metal at approximately 10:23 p.m., a detail previously dismissed due to ambiguity, but now mapped against Curtis Mallory's reconstructed route. Another recalled the sudden dimming of lights in adjacent houses, likely due to the automatic timers or fluctuations, yet the timing coincided with known movements, suggesting subtle environmental alignment with human activity. Each account, fragmentary in isolation, gained gravitas when layered atop the reconstructed timeline, reinforcing the plausibility of intrusion and interaction without immediate detection. Forensic teams revisited the chemical residues found on doorknobs, lamps, and the corner of the carpet. Advanced spectrometry indicated compounds consistent with materials Curtis had handled or been exposed to during transient employment and movement in early 2005. Analysts correlated these chemical signatures with environmental mapping, revealing pathways and potential touchpoints inside the home. These insights, subtle yet critical, allowed investigators to infer behaviors, points of contact, and potential escalation moments, bridging gaps that had long rendered the night opaque. Behavioral profiling advanced to a granular stage. Curtis Mallory's known impulsivity, opportunistic tendencies, and transient lifestyle were modeled against reconstructed interactions, environmental constraints, and physical evidence. Analysts proposed sequences where minor confrontations escalated, mapping psychological triggers to environmental actions. Scenarios considered the potential for sudden escalation, miscalculated aggression, or opportunistic concealment, providing a behavioral context that aligned with both forensic evidence and witness accounts. Each model was tested for plausibility, weighted against known data, and adjusted to account for previously unconsidered variables, ensuring a rigorous, scientifically informed framework. The cryptic notebook revealed more. Analysts identified patterns suggesting environmental surveillance, observational notes, and possible premeditation. Dates aligned with Jared's routines. Locations referenced known transit points, and coded entries suggested awareness of neighborhood surveillance or potential witnesses. Interpretation required caution. Analysts were mindful of bias, ensuring that inferences were substantiated by corroborating evidence. Yet the notebook's significance grew with each layer of analysis, a tangible link between human intent, action, and the elusive resolution of the disappearance. Environmental reconstruction advanced into three-dimensional modeling. Investigators simulated Curtis Mallory's potential movements through Jared's home, considering entry points, furniture arrangements, lighting, and visibility. Scenarios mapped likely pathways, points of confrontation, and areas where evidence might have been deposited or disturbed. Overlaying these simulations with witness recollections, forensic traces, and behavioral predictions created a detailed, plausible narrative sequence, highlighting both opportunities and constraints inherent to the environment. Each simulation revealed subtle inconsistencies and potential insights, refining the investigative focus with precision. Community engagement revealed additional minor anomalies. Residents recounted brief observations: a vehicle moving slowly, lights flickering unexpectedly, a shadow moving across a yard. Each fragment, trivial at the time, now contributed to a dense matrix of observation, aligning with reconstructed movements and environmental simulations. Investigators cataloged these anomalies meticulously, understanding that cold cases are often resolved through the aggregation of subtle, previously dismissed details. The past, once obscured by time and neglect, now yielded a tapestry of interconnected events. Digital forensics added a layer of clarity. Early mobile phone records, sparse GPS logs, and remnants of social media activity were mapped against the reconstructed timeline. Patterns emerged: brief stops, deviations from ordinary routes, and transient interactions suggesting observation or preparation. Each data point, seemingly minor in isolation, validated portions of the reconstructed sequence, reinforcing the plausibility of Curtis Mallory's interactions with the environment, witnesses, and ultimately Jared Thompson. Legal preparation intensified. Investigators sought additional warrants, coordinated interviews, and prepared surveillance measures with precision. The convergence of evidence, DNA confirmation, forensic reconstruction, behavioral modeling, environmental analysis, and digital footprints demanded careful handling to ensure procedural integrity. Every statement, observation, and recovered trace required documentation sufficient to withstand potential legal scrutiny, a meticulous process magnified by the case's long dormancy and heightened public interest. By mid-2021, investigators had constructed a multi-layered narrative framework for the night in question. Curtis Mallory's presence, corroborated by DNA, physical traces, environmental modeling, and witness recollections, intersected with behavioral predictions to create a chilling, coherent account of potential interactions. Each detail, from the scraping of glass to the displacement of furniture, from chemical residues to transient shadows, contributed to a reconstructed sequence that suggested confrontation, movement, and disappearance. Yet the final moments remained unconfirmed, a lingering shadow over the narrative. A breakthrough emerged unexpectedly from a minor tip. A local resident remembered an unusual sound near an abandoned storage area. Faint metallic clinking, brief footsteps, and the impression of hurried concealment. Analysts mapped this location against Curtis Mallory's reconstructed route, environmental constraints, and forensic residues. The site, previously unconsidered, now provided a potential nexus for understanding post-confrontation activity. Investigators dispatched teams to meticulously examine the area, documenting soil composition, residue traces, and environmental alignment with previous evidence. Each observation was cataloged, triangulated, and assessed for plausibility. Psychological profiling reinforced the hypothesis that Curtis's actions were opportunistic but potentially escalating under stress. Analysts considered scenarios where initial intrusion might have prompted confrontation, inadvertent escalation, or rapid improvisation. These models were aligned with physical evidence, environmental reconstruction, and witness accounts, generating testable predictions for forensic confirmation. Each predictive model allowed investigators to anticipate patterns, identify likely locations of residual evidence, and plan targeted interviews with potential witnesses or associates. The integration of environmental, forensic, behavioral, and testimonial data produced a dense, multidimensional narrative. Investigators mapped the entire night of March 15, 2005, with hour-by-hour precision, accounting for minor anomalies, transient interactions, and environmental constraints. Each potential pathway, each hypothesized sequence, and each behavioral inference was documented and analyzed. While gaps remained, the framework provided an unprecedented clarity for a case dormant for over 16 years. By late 2021, the investigation had reached a critical juncture. Curtis Mallory's reconstructed presence intersected with multiple layers of evidence: chemical, physical, testimonial, behavioral, and digital, forming a compelling, though incomplete, sequence of events. Investigators prepared for targeted interviews, site examinations, and evidence recovery, seeking confirmation of hypothesized interactions. Each move was deliberate, each strategy informed by the meticulous integration of decades-old clues and modern forensic capabilities. The cold case, once silent and impenetrable, now pulsed with urgency, its story approaching a long-awaited, potentially shocking revelation. The first weeks of 2022 erupted with urgency. Curtis Mallory, once merely a reconstructed presence, now loomed as the axis of a narrative that had remained unresolved for nearly 17 years. Investigators, armed with layers of forensic evidence, behavioral modeling, environmental reconstructions, and witness recollections, moved deliberately, meticulously, understanding that each step could tip the balance toward revelation or dead end. The cryptic notebook, the abandoned storage area, and the faint chemical residues had all coalesced into a lattice of clues, a web that stretched across time and space to the night of March 15, 2005. Every detail was now magnified, every anomaly scrutinized, every minor discrepancy analyzed. A breakthrough came in an unexpected form: digital remnants buried in early cell towers and transient service logs. Analysts recovered call records, minimal though they were, and cross-referenced signal pings with reconstructed movements. Small deviations from normal routines emerged, aligning with environmental reconstructions and witness accounts. One minor cell ping suggested a stop near a neighborhood park adjacent to Oakwood Drive. At exactly the same time, a neighbor reported a fleeting shadow crossing their yard. These correlations, subtle yet compelling, allowed investigators to narrow the window of interaction, anchoring a timeline that had remained diffuse and speculative for over a decade and a half. The abandoned storage site revealed further clues. Investigators discovered faint impressions in the soil, aligned in patterns consistent with human movement. Fiber analysis identified traces from transient garments associated with Curtis Mallory. Chemical residues hinted at handling or concealment of materials, perhaps inadvertently dropped during hurried movement. These microevidences, previously invisible to the investigative lens of 2005, now illuminated possible sequences, paths taken, potential points of contact, and likely areas where interactions escalated. Each observation was documented meticulously, triangulated against forensic data, environmental reconstruction, and behavioral analysis. Behavioral profiling intensified. Analysts constructed probabilistic models of Curtis Mallory's likely actions under duress or stress, considering patterns of impulsivity, transient lifestyle, and opportunistic tendencies. They hypothesized escalation triggers, sequences of confrontation, and potential methods of concealment or evasion. Each model was tested against existing evidence, environmental constraints, and witness accounts. Scenarios included spontaneous confrontation, attempts to hide evidence, and rapid movement to peripheral locations. Analysts cross-validated these behavioral models with physical traces, chemical residues, and reconstructed movement paths, creating a high-resolution framework of possible events. Witness interviews provided crucial validation. A local resident recalled a vehicle idling with engine running, lights dimmed, precisely within a window of Curtis Mallory's reconstructed presence. Another witness reported seeing a fleeting figure crouch near the fence, moving deliberately, pausing briefly before vanishing. These observations, though minor when initially reported, aligned perfectly with environmental modeling and forensic evidence. Investigators cataloged and cross-referenced each memory, layering human recollection onto a matrix of physical and digital traces to produce a multi-dimensional reconstruction of the night. The cryptic notebook continued to yield insights. Analysts deciphered coded entries suggesting specific observational awareness, including monitoring of light patterns, vehicle movements, and neighborhood activity. Dates and references corresponded with known routines of Jared Thompson and environmental constraints identified in forensic analysis. The notebook provided evidence of premeditation or, at minimum, acute awareness, offering context for previously unexplained movement patterns and behavior sequences. Each interpretation was carefully corroborated, ensuring that analytical assumptions were grounded in evidence rather than conjecture. Environmental reconstructions advanced into refined three-dimensional simulations. Investigators integrated furniture placement, window positioning, light sources, and likely movement patterns into detailed visualizations. Simulations suggested multiple pathways within Jared's home, potential points of interaction, and areas where evidence may have been left or disturbed. These models, overlaid with forensic traces, chemical residues, witness accounts, and behavioral analysis, produced a scenario increasingly consistent with a sudden escalation during interaction, rapid movement, and potential concealment of materials. Forensic teams revisited the DNA traces in the context of new movement models. Subtle transfer patterns suggested not only presence but also interaction with specific objects, a lamp, a doorknob, a corner of carpet. These placements aligned with reconstructed pathways and behavioral predictions, highlighting moments where Curtis Mallory's presence intersected physically and possibly confrontationally with Jared Thompson. Each microanalysis, though seemingly minor, contributed cumulatively to an increasingly coherent, multi-layered reconstruction of the night. Digital analysis revealed additional anomalies. Minimal signal deviations in early cell networks, transient location pings, and brief connections suggested movement through peripheral streets and unmonitored alleys. These anomalies aligned with previously identified environmental constraints and witness observations, supporting scenarios of observation, opportunistic positioning, and rapid ingress and egress. Investigators integrated these data into the chronological map, refining the timeline and reducing ambiguity in the reconstructed sequence of events. Legal strategy advanced in parallel. Investigators prepared controlled interviews, evidence collection protocols, and surveillance measures to capitalize on accumulated evidence. Each procedural decision was deliberate, designed to preserve admissibility while testing hypotheses generated from forensic, environmental, behavioral, and testimonial data. Investigators recognized that after nearly 17 years, precision was paramount. Any misstep could compromise critical evidence or weaken the potential for resolution. By mid-2022, the multi-layered framework produced a chillingly plausible sequence. Curtis Mallory's confirmed presence, aligned with DNA traces, forensic analysis, environmental modeling, behavioral profiling, and witness accounts, suggested an opportunistic intrusion escalating rapidly within Jared Thompson's home. Simulations indicated movement pathways, points of contact, and possible moments of confrontation. Yet the ultimate outcome, what precisely transpired, how Jared disappeared, and whether the act was intentional or impulsive, remained shrouded. Each layer of evidence pointed toward a critical juncture, a decisive moment whose precise contours were obscured, but whose implications were profoundly disturbing. Investigators turned to peripheral evidence for corroboration. Environmental sampling in adjacent areas revealed soil and residue patterns consistent with rapid movement, transient placement of objects, and possible attempts at concealment. Fiber and chemical analysis linked these residues to Curtis Mallory's known materials, transient lifestyle, and temporary residences. Cross-referencing these findings with environmental models produced a scenario that accounted for movement through the home, interaction with objects, and potential exit routes. Each minor trace became amplified in significance, providing additional validation to reconstructed sequences. Psychological modeling suggested that Curtis's impulsivity and opportunistic behavior likely interacted with environmental and situational stressors to escalate events beyond initial intent. Analysts considered how sudden confrontation, unplanned observation by neighbors, and spatial constraints could have led to rapid, adaptive behaviors, movements, concealments, and actions leaving minimal yet detectable traces. These models aligned with forensic and environmental evidence, producing a high-resolution hypothesis of behavioral and physical interaction during the critical hours. The notebook, environmental traces, witness recollections, and behavioral analysis converged toward a central understanding. The disappearance was likely the culmination of a series of opportunistic and escalatory actions. Each evidence layer supported this interpretation, though gaps remained in the final moments. How Jared Thompson's fate unfolded after confrontation, the specific movements leading to disappearance, and whether any third-party involvement existed. The cold case had transformed from ambiguity into a multi-layered, high-resolution investigative puzzle, its solution tantalizingly within reach yet still partially obscured. By late 2022, the investigation approached a pivotal threshold. Curtis Mallory, confirmed present through DNA and environmental alignment, remained the central figure. Every minor observation, each cryptic notebook entry, every residue, fiber, and shadow had been accounted for, integrated into a coherent, chillingly plausible reconstruction. Investigators prepared for final phases, targeted interviews, focused evidence recovery, and forensic validation to test and refine hypotheses. The culmination of 17 years of persistence, technology, and analytical rigor was imminent. The case, dormant for nearly 2 decades, teetered on the brink of revelation, poised to shock, unsettle, and finally illuminate the long-hidden truth of March 15, 2005. The final months of 2022 carried a tension that was almost palpable. Curtis Mallory, once a peripheral figure in an unresolved cold case, now stood at the center of a meticulously reconstructed nightmare. Investigators, led by Maria Delgado, coordinated simultaneous lines of inquiry, controlled interviews, forensic re-examinations, environmental modeling, and digital trace analysis. Every element was synchronized, every potential lead weighed against the accumulated evidence from nearly 2 decades. The air in Waco itself seemed to hold its breath, a community suspended between memory, speculation, and the anticipation of revelation. Unexpectedly, a breakthrough occurred when analysts re-examined fragments of metal found near the abandoned storage area months prior. These fragments, corroded and partially buried, contained trace DNA consistent with Curtis Mallory and, astonishingly, minute cellular material matching Jared Thompson. The finding was subtle, almost imperceptible in isolation, but when layered atop reconstructed movement pathways, witness accounts, environmental analysis, and behavioral modeling, it created a convergence that was difficult to dismiss. Investigators now had physical evidence suggesting that some interaction, however fleeting or catastrophic, had occurred at this peripheral site, far beyond the initial confines of Jared's home. Simultaneously, digital forensic teams uncovered a pattern of activity that had long escaped attention. Temporary phone records, previously considered incomplete, revealed a series of transient pings along Curtis's route, aligning with both environmental reconstruction and witness recollections. One ping, precisely timed, corresponded to a location near a rarely used alley behind Oakwood Drive. Witnesses had reported a fleeting shadow near this location on the night of March 15th, a detail that had once seemed anecdotal. These correlations, subtle yet undeniable, allowed investigators to narrow the window of critical interactions, anchoring a timeline that had remained diffuse for nearly 17 years. Behavioral modeling intensified. Analysts hypothesized sequences of action informed by Curtis Mallory's documented tendencies toward impulsivity and opportunistic behavior. They considered scenarios in which initial intrusion escalated, interactions intensified, and movement through both Jared's home and peripheral locations created opportunities for traces, residues, and microevidence. Each scenario was tested against forensic data, environmental reconstructions, and witness statements, producing a set of highly plausible sequences that accounted for nearly every anomaly observed over the years. The cryptic notebook gained renewed significance. Entries previously considered vague now aligned with these sequences. Coded dates, locations, and observational notations suggested acute awareness of environmental conditions, light patterns, vehicle movements, and potential witnesses. Analysts inferred that Curtis may have monitored the household and surrounding areas with deliberate attention, using observations to navigate paths, avoid detection, and interact opportunistically. Each notation, cross-referenced against reconstructed movement, provided increasingly detailed insight into the potential mindset and tactical decisions involved in the night's events. Environmental simulations reached unprecedented clarity. Three-dimensional models incorporated every known variable: furniture placement, lighting, sight lines, pathways, and potential points of interaction. These simulations suggested how Curtis Mallory may have navigated the space, interacted with objects, and encountered Jared Thompson. Micromovements, foot placement, object contact, and spatial orientation were mapped in alignment with forensic evidence. The simulations produced plausible reconstructions of escalation points, potential struggle, and subsequent movement to peripheral areas where residues were later discovered. Witness recollections proved invaluable in contextualizing these reconstructions. Neighbors who had once dismissed fleeting sounds, shadows, or vehicle anomalies now provided testimonies consistent with the simulated sequences. One account detailed a faint scraping noise near the window at 10:24 p.m., corresponding to modeled movement of Curtis within the house. Another described a brief flash of light reflecting off a moving object, potentially aligning with handling of metallic materials later recovered from the storage site. These minor observations, long considered insignificant, now anchored the reconstructed sequence in human perception, confirming both plausibility and chronology. Forensic reanalysis reinforced these connections. Residues, fibers, and trace materials were mapped onto specific simulated movements, revealing points of interaction and potential escalation. Chemical analysis indicated handling of materials consistent with both the environment and Curtis Mallory's known transient activities. DNA traces, though minute, linked interactions within the home to peripheral locations, providing an unbroken thread of presence and activity across multiple sites. Each discovery narrowed the gap between hypothesis and confirmed reconstruction, building toward a nearly complete picture of the night. Legal strategy was recalibrated. Investigators prepared meticulously for controlled interactions, surveillance, and evidence recovery, ensuring every procedural step maintained admissibility. After nearly 2 decades of dormancy, precision was paramount. Investigators anticipated evasive behavior, strategic deception, and potential obfuscation, structuring interviews and operations to maximize the likelihood of obtaining verifiable insights. The procedural framework mirrored the precision of forensic reconstruction, combining legal rigor with investigative creativity. By mid-2022, investigators had delineated multiple overlapping sequences of probable action. Curtis Mallory's confirmed presence, DNA evidence, chemical residues, environmental reconstruction, behavioral modeling, and witness corroboration converged into a chillingly plausible narrative, an opportunistic intrusion escalating rapidly within Jared Thompson's home. Movement through peripheral locations, interaction with objects and environments leaving microtraces, an eventual departure into transient pathways. Yet the ultimate fate, Jared's disappearance, potential concealment, or further interaction, remained obscured, a lingering shadow demanding one final revelation. Then, an unexpected lead emerged from the smallest details. A minor resident recollection, overlooked in prior interviews, indicated a fleeting figure moving toward the back alley approximately 10 minutes after the estimated time of critical events. Investigators mapped this movement against environmental constraints, forensic residues, and behavioral models. The alignment was uncanny. Footprints, fiber traces, and chemical residues corresponded perfectly with this peripheral path. The reconstruction suggested that Curtis Mallory may have carried objects or interacted with additional environmental elements in this location, a revelation that added a new dimension to the sequence and hinted at the potential for uncovering critical physical evidence. Behavioral analysis supported these findings. Analysts noted that Curtis's patterns, transience, opportunism, and impulsivity would align with rapid movement through less observed areas, minimizing exposure while enabling the disposal or concealment of evidence. This prediction matched observed residue patterns, footprints, and witness observations. Each element reinforced the plausibility of the reconstructed sequence and increased the probability that the case could finally yield definitive answers. As autumn 2022 approached, the investigation's focus intensified on these peripheral areas. Teams meticulously documented soil composition, residue traces, fiber alignments, and environmental cues. Even subtle elements, displaced leaves, minor indentations in the ground, faint metallic glints, were cataloged and analyzed. These minute observations, integrated with forensic, behavioral, and environmental modeling, provided a near-complete reconstruction of movement patterns, interactions, and potential escalation points. The stage was set for the long-anticipated breakthrough. Media coverage escalated public attention. The DNA match, cryptic notebook, and reconstruction efforts captured the imagination of the community, renewing both hope and anxiety. Friends and family of Jared Thompson followed developments closely, acutely aware that resolution was near, but not yet guaranteed. Investigators recognized the delicate balance. Every move needed precision, every disclosure measured, and every hypothesis rigorously validated. The pressure was immense. After nearly 17 years, the next revelation could finally illuminate the darkest moments of March 15th, 2005. By the end of 2022, all investigative threads, DNA evidence, behavioral modeling, environmental reconstruction, forensic residues, witness corroboration, and digital traces had converged into an unprecedented alignment. Curtis Mallory's presence, actions, and probable movements had been reconstructed with chilling precision. Investigators prepared for the final stages: targeted interviews, confirmation of peripheral evidence, and a potential recovery of physical materials that could finally resolve the central mystery. The cold case, dormant for nearly 2 decades, teetered on the precipice of revelation, poised to shock, unsettle, and illuminate the long-hidden truth of that fateful night. Winter 2023 descended on Waco with an eerie quiet, as if the city itself was holding its breath. Curtis Mallory, now fully entrenched in the narrative reconstructed over nearly 2 decades, became both the axis and the shadow of a story that refused closure until this moment. Investigators, armed with DNA confirmation, environmental reconstructions, behavioral models, cryptic notebook entries, and meticulously cataloged witness observations, converged on a final strategy. Every step was calculated, every detail cross-validated, every scenario simulated against all available evidence. The culmination of 17 years of uncertainty had finally crystallized, but the tension, the stakes, the unknown outcome remained almost unbearable. A final search of the peripheral alley and abandoned storage areas revealed what forensic teams had long anticipated: minute disturbances in the soil, faint fibers, traces of chemical residue, and, astonishingly, a small metallic object partially buried. Lab analysis confirmed that the object contained both Curtis Mallory's DNA and trace cellular material from Jared Thompson. The implications were staggering. After 17 years, tangible evidence directly linking Curtis to interaction with Jared beyond mere presence had surfaced. Investigators processed the object with meticulous care, each measurement, photograph, and chemical test adding another layer of validation to an already densely reconstructed narrative. Behavioral analysis provided context for the discovery. Curtis's impulsive, opportunistic tendencies, combined with his awareness of surveillance and environmental constraints, suggested that the object may have been displaced or discarded during rapid movement or an escalation. The peripheral location, previously considered incidental, now assumed critical significance. It represented both action and consequence, the tangible residue of a night that had haunted investigators, family, and community for nearly 2 decades. Witness statements were revisited in light of this discovery. The fleeting observations of shadows, sounds, and vehicles aligned with the reconstructed timeline and the location of the recovered object. Minor details, once dismissed, gained profound significance. One neighbor recalled a subtle reflection of light near the back alley, possibly the glint of the metallic object during hurried movement. Another described a muffled scraping sound coinciding with Curtis Mallory's probable path through the area. These fragments, layered atop forensic and behavioral evidence, formed a dense, high-resolution reconstruction of the sequence of interactions on March 15, 2005. Environmental simulations integrated these findings with extraordinary precision. Three-dimensional modeling suggested pathways, sequences of movement, and probable interactions within Jared Thompson's home and through peripheral locations. Points of contact, subtle displacements of objects, chemical residues, and footprints were all aligned within a coherent reconstruction. Investigators visualized the escalation, a confrontation that began opportunistically, intensified through rapid action, and concluded with disappearance into transient pathways. Each simulation revealed subtle, almost imperceptible details that collectively illuminated the mechanics of a night that had long resisted comprehension. Forensic analysis reinforced the convergence. Minute DNA traces on furniture, the metallic object, and soil aligned with a modeled sequence of events, providing independent confirmation of pathways, contacts, and potential escalation points. Chemical residues, fibers, and microscopic environmental traces further validated the reconstructed movement of Curtis Mallory. Every piece of evidence, long dormant or previously overlooked, now interlocked into a narrative both chilling and compelling. Behavioral modeling suggested the final act of escalation occurred in an unmonitored window of approximately 10 minutes. Curtis's impulsive decision-making, informed by transient lifestyle, environmental constraints, and situational stressors, aligned with forensic and environmental data to produce a sequence consistent with confrontation, movement, and interaction leading to disappearance. While investigators could not directly observe the final moments, every layer of evidence converged to suggest an outcome that was immediate, unplanned, and irreversible. Legal teams prepared for controlled interviews and potential recovery of additional evidence. Each strategy was designed to maintain procedural integrity while maximizing the opportunity for verification. Investigators knew that after 17 years, any misstep could compromise the culmination of painstaking reconstruction. Every interview, every collection, every measurement was orchestrated with precision, the weight of 2 decades pressing on every decision. Community anticipation reached a fevered pitch. The DNA match, cryptic notebook, environmental reconstructions, and newly recovered object had reignited both hope and anxiety. Friends and family of Jared Thompson, long suspended in uncertainty, were drawn into a narrative that had remained unresolved for nearly 2 decades. The city, too, felt the weight of suspense, every whisper, glance, and recollection echoing with the memory of a night that had left indelible scars. The final convergence occurred when digital traces, forensic data, environmental reconstruction, behavioral analysis, and witness corroboration aligned with extraordinary precision. Curtis Mallory's movements, likely sequences of interaction, points of contact, and peripheral activity were now supported by independent lines of evidence. Investigators could visualize, with near certainty, the arc of action that had begun opportunistically and escalated through rapid, adaptive behavior. Each fragment, chemical residue, fiber, footprint, observation, digital ping, was part of a coherent, chilling narrative. Yet the final moments remained partially obscured. Jared Thompson's ultimate fate, the precise mechanisms of disappearance, and the final consequences remained beyond direct observation. Investigators, while armed with unprecedented clarity, faced the lingering shadow of uncertainty, the void left by the absence of definitive closure. The case, though nearly solved, retained a spectral element, a reminder that human action, impulsive decisions, and the passage of time can obscure even the most meticulously reconstructed events. Maria Delgado reflected on the culmination of 17 years of relentless inquiry. The investigation had transformed from a cold case into a high-resolution narrative, a chilling reconstruction that illuminated nearly every movement, interaction, and consequence. Yet the emotional weight, the human impact, and the lingering unknowns persisted. The revelation of Curtis Mallory's presence, confirmed actions, and a recovered object provided resolution. But the mystery retained a haunting edge, a psychological imprint on investigators, community, and family alike. The cold case, dormant for nearly 2 decades, now pulsed with clarity. Curtis Mallory's role, the reconstructed sequence of March 15, 2005, and the tangible evidence recovered created a narrative both horrifying and compelling. Investigators had illuminated the night's events with unprecedented precision, yet the final moments, the unobserved consequences, left an indelible shadow. The resolution was both cathartic and unsettling, a confirmation of presence, a reconstruction of actions, and a lingering reminder of what was lost. Community reaction was intense. Friends and family of Jared Thompson grappled with relief, grief, and shock. The revelation of Curtis Mallory's involvement, the reconstructed sequence, and the newly recovered evidence provided answers long sought, yet the absence of direct observation of the final moments left a residue of ambiguity. Waco itself seemed to breathe again, a city long haunted by uncertainty, now confronting a revelation both profound and unsettling. As the investigation concluded, investigators recognized the enduring impact. Curtis Mallory's actions, reconstructed with near-total fidelity, illuminated the mechanisms of an opportunistic escalation, a fleeting confrontation, and the disappearance of Jared Thompson. The case, once silent for 17 years, now spoke with a voice amplified by forensic science, behavioral insight, environmental reconstruction, and human memory. Yet the echo of uncertainty, the absence of direct observation of the final act, remained a haunting reminder that even the most thorough investigation cannot entirely erase the shadows cast by time, impulsive action, and human unpredictability. The story of March 15, 2005, finally emerged from the obscurity of 17 years, a narrative reconstructed from the smallest traces, the faintest observations, and the persistent pursuit of truth. Curtis Mallory's presence, interactions, and peripheral activity were documented, modeled, and corroborated. Jared Thompson's disappearance, while partially explained through reconstructed events, retained an edge of mystery that ensured the case would continue to resonate. The cold case, now resolved in presence and sequence, remained haunting in its unanswered final moments, a chilling testament to the persistence of investigation, the resilience of evidence, and the enduring enigma of human action. And so, the Texas 2005 cold case reached its denouement. DNA matches, forensic reconstruction, behavioral analysis, and environmental modeling had illuminated 17 years of darkness. The truth of Curtis Mallory's presence and the reconstructed sequence of events was finally clear. Yet the shadows lingered, the unobserved moments, the ultimate fate of Jared Thompson, and the chilling resonance of what remained unknown left the community, the investigators, and the family with an echo of unresolved horror. The case closed in clarity, yet remained open in memory, a haunting testament to mystery, human unpredictability, and the relentless pursuit of truth.